Yes.
We're live.
Good evening, everybody. Stand for the pledge of allegiance, please. All yours, Doc.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Evening, everybody. All right. Try calling last on the list because I totally forgot it. I apologize.
I need a motion to open the meeting.
I get a motion to open. So moved. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Start out by asking the audience if they have any questions on the agenda, anything they want to talk about on the agenda. All right, first item on the agenda, discussion and approval for a tax certiorari settlement for 20 Hatfield Lane, Goshen, Comfort Inn. Received a letter from our attorney, Rob Rometta. It addresses a 2-year settlement for 2020 and 2021, I believe. Rob?
Thank you. Okay. Good evening, Rob Rometta, special counsel here for the tax certiorari proceedings. What's before the board this evening is a proposed settlement for 20 Hatfield Lane, section 126, lot 1-4.1, which is the Fairfield Inn and Suites. The petitioner had filed 2 years worth of lawsuits, 2020, 2021. It's an income producing property, so the law provides that the most persuasive evidence of value would be the income that's derived. Here we had became intimately involved with the room capacity, the changes in the room rates, things such as the daily rates. The end result was, I believe that the petitioners did make a fair showing for reduction for the 2020 year only. As for the 2021 year, there were arguments that it was trending up towards more occupancy, as well as just a few miles down the road, we know is Legoland, which will definitely affect the occupancy of that hotel. So the end result was, of those 2 years, we were able to get a 0 reduction for the 2021 year, which is important. I'll explain in a moment. And then it's just a gap year, almost like a reprieve for the 2020, where they received a reduction equaling approximately 25% of their assessed value for that year. So it brought the assessed value from $3,859,375 down to $2,894,531. Then for the 2021 year, we brought the assessment back, and that's already been in place now because the roll has already been set back to its original assessment. The end result are the estimated refunds for the town would be $6,441. And the reason why it was important to bring back the last year is because when you settle a tax certiorari proceeding, you normally get a 3-year freeze on most recently filed, most recently reduced assessment. So by virtue of the 2021, we're going back up to its original assessment. That means prospectively, that will be the assessment here and after, unless they challenge again, as opposed to having the reduced amount for 2020 going forward. After extensive conversations with the school district attorney, as well as the town assessor, Alan Eskew, we've reached this proposed settlement, and we're asking that the board approve it. Thank you.
Any comments, questions? Bill? No? George?
Yeah, I just had one question. So that's- Well, there was, for 2020, was that because they were doing all the remodeling? Is that why their amount of rooms that they were able to rent was down?
So in 2020, the available rooms were more. If they had 35,101 rooms available, as opposed to 2019, which was slightly less, 34,675. So it was a debate as to why that performance of the hotel was declining. I mean, my belief is that it had changed owners in 2016, and I think that sometimes affects the performance of a hotel. In fact, if you looked at historical data, it's been declining since 2018. That was my hypothesis. I don't think the other side was agreeing completely. We were kind of agreeing to disagree, and that's why we had to have that stop year after 2021.
So just, I do have a quick question. This was an out-of-court settlement, or was it a decree by the judge?
So this is an out-of-court proposed settlement.
Okay.
It's been approved by the petitioner, and I'm asking for resolution tonight to approve it for the board.
Right.
And it would be, and we've already got the school district's approval as well.
Right. I'm just curious, what were the legal fees on this project? Hip shot.
So the legal fees in connection with this proceeding were roughly $1,500. Had it gone further to court, it would have been, I would probably 10 times that, be able to try the case. And most importantly, when you're dealing with an appraisal of a big unit like that, the appraisal fees itself, that's the elephant in the room, that could be the most expensive.
Good job. Okay.
It's a great job. I think that for the audience, we have a choice. We can go to court and spend copious amounts or you can settle out of court like this. And Rob is very, very good at this. We settle so many of them like this. So this is peanuts compared to the big picture. So
It becomes a game of economics and not whether you're right or wrong. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay. So you need a motion for us to approve?
Rick, anything?
So,
Yeah, I need a motion to approve the settlement of the tax surcharge.
So
so
moved.
moved.
Second,
I'm sorry. Bill and Doug said it
Okay,
at
I'll
the same
second
time.
this requires a roll call, correct?
yeah, it says roll call.
Bill,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. All right, thank you very much, Rob, appreciate it.
Thank you. Nice man.
Thank you, Rob. Next on the agenda is a discussion and presentation by TAM Enterprises on the formation of a transportation corporation and associated wastewater treatment plant to serve the same. Okay. Just for the audience, Rick Florio is going to recuse himself from discussion because of his employment by TAM. All right, I got a letter from King Garrow and Deutsch. Dear Supervisor Betro and town board members, on behalf of the applicant TAM Enterprises, we are hereby requesting an opportunity to come before the town board on the July 28th board meeting. TAM is proposing to form a transportation corporation and associated wastewater treatment plant to service the same. The project would be constructed on one of the multiple parcels that are currently occupied at the Altori landfill and under ownership of the Altori Landfill Incorporated. The Transportation Corporation requires town board approval as well as special use permits needed for the construction of the treatment facility. The proposed Transportation Corporation is meant to serve the commercial users along Route 17M corridor from New Hampton to the village of Goshen. The partial list of current existing properties that would be served by the facility is attached. Additional businesses have expressed interest and is being served by the proposed wastewater treatment plant. Businesses proposed service are eager to see the project move forward. Cam and Brian, Tony,
Engineer's not here yet, he's on his way.
you want me to table it? I'll move to the next one until Jason gets here? Up to you.
Yeah, whatever you think.
Yeah, I mean, wait for him. It's only fair. Okay, no problem.
I do have another letter I'd like to hand out, just. This is from Orange Rolls to Bosse's.
Oh. It's a supporting letter?
Yep.
Okay.
There's another one in the package. too,
Yeah,
From
you,
Billy.
right? Yeah, I saw it.
We need one more. Oh, no, you're. this one, you're-
I can still read it. We'll move on to this next.
We're going to move on to item number 3, discussion and presentation of the Altura Solar 5.megawatt solar array project proposed to be potentially sited on the Altura landfill, 73 Hartley Road in Goshen. Brian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. While my colleague gets getting set up, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ryan McCune. I'm a representative of Nexamp Solar, the company that has partnered with the El Torre Landfill Incorporated to propose the project that we brought before you this evening. It should be noted that we have formally applied and put forward applications to the planning board to consider this project. Those were submitted back on the 21st and were slated for initial meetings with them on the 4th of August. At this junction, what we're hoping to do is have a high-level conversation about this project, get concerns, input on both the design and the path forward from the town board, so we can consider those in our upcoming conversations with the town board, zoning board, and planning board. So we prepared a really brief conversation here. I'll kind of get started with that first little kickoff. We're going to go through kind of a high-level company overview of Nexamp, just so you guys can all be familiar with who we are and what we do. Secondarily, a site overview. I'm sure you guys do not need to be reminded about the El Torre landfill site. It's obviously well known. So we'll keep that relatively brief. Then we'll head into a quick site plan overview, our understanding of the permitting process following our meeting with Mr. Hoffman and some other members of the town from about 2 weeks ago, as well as some other information regarding the cap repair plan that's been approved by DEC currently and construction phasing, so on and so forth, leading to the most important part, which will be a Q&A, where I really look forward to hearing questions from you all about the project.
Just a slight housekeeping thing.
Yes,
Did you get
absolutely.
a letter of authorization from the Territory Corporation?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
In order to represent them, you gave it to our planning board?
Yeah, it was turned in with the planning
Just,
application.
I know we've had litigation with them many times, so
Yeah,
I want to make sure it's done right. Thank you.
understood,
Okay.
understood.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we got to cross our T's and dot our I's.
Yeah.
So just a quick little summary of Nexamp. Again, I'll be very brief. So Nexamp is a community solar company. We are at this point, the largest owner and operator of community solar projects in New York State. We operate about 35% of the installed projects in New York State at this point, so a relatively large market share. For those who aren't familiar, community solar is a 5 megawatts and under solar project that is plugged directly into the local distribution grid. It's not transmission level infrastructure, going anywhere else in the state. It does not get distributed regionally. It is distributed locally, and in this case, through the Hartley Road substation. Yes, sir.
So you are going to build it and then operate it
Yes, sir.
versus a lot of them build it and then they lease it out to somebody else.
Yeah. So there are a lot of downstream developers, but we're an upstream developer. We both build and acquire projects. So we buy projects from a myriad of companies and then operate them long term, which is a great question and an important point to make, I think.
And you're gonna own the property?
Not the property, we will own the facility. So we have a lease agreement with the
Lease
Alter,
agreement.
yeah.
You
With the
don't
Alter.
want to own the project.
No, we do not, sir, for obvious reasons. Again, won't go into these details in much, but we've been a top solar contractor nationwide for about 9 years running. We have over 1,700 acres of projects active currently, over a gigawatt of operational projects and in construction projects. There's currently around 35 projects operational in New York State with another 28 under construction currently. So we're a company that's doing a great deal of work in New York. I think what's really important number, back to the community solar angle that we discussed earlier, right now we have a growing customer base of north of 40,000 people that we manage solar subscriptions for on a daily basis. So folks that contract with us for energy to get discounts on their energy from everyone from Orange and Rockland to National Grid and ISA, et cetera. Anyone who works in the Northeast, we work with. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Liza, and she can kind of go through some of our capabilities and some project details.
Yeah, so as Ryan touched on and as your question, we are unique from other solar developers in that we design, build, own, and operate the facility for the lifetime of the facility. That's our business model. It's not to construct the facility and sell it, or even get an interconnection agreement and sell that. So with that, we'll get into the site overview. As you know, this is the Altuari landfill. There is actually 2 capped landfills as part of this. The northern landfill and the southern landfill cap. Our project spans both of those. So there are multiple parcels at play here. And we'll get into some features of this cap as it currently exists. But what we're proposing is a 5 megawatt AC. solar array. These are fixed tilt. What that means is they are stationary. The panel face is stationary. They are on a ballasted racking system. That's really important for landfill projects so that we're not puncturing the landfill cap or anything like that. It sits on top of the cap, which is in line with everything that we'd be constructing on the cap would be above grade. The roads would be above grade. The inverters we would put above grade. So as not to have any disturbance to the landfill cap itself. The interconnection is via Hartley Road, which you can see on the site plan. There's the utility poles present for that. And then, as we had mentioned, this is, oh, I guess we'll go through permitting first. Got ahead of myself, but because this is a landfill, it's unique from other projects in that there are various approvals that we need from the town, planning board and zoning board and whatnot. But as far as the design, that a lot of that is steered by DEC because we also need to concurrently go through that process through DEC. So a lot of different elements at play here. We've overviewed kind of what that process will look like. I don't know if you want to add anything to this.
Yeah, I think it should be noted. So we have engaged DEC on this project. We've been engaged with DEC on this project for about 9 months already. The reality was when we first filed our interconnection applications with Orange and Rockland, we engaged DEC almost immediately because we wanted them to understand that we were bringing this project forward, get an understanding about their high level concerns, what they needed to see moving forward, design concerns. So the design that Liza just showed you has already been given kind of preliminary consideration by DEC, and they said, okay, great, pull together a full engineering report, pull together a full post-closure management plan, which we can get into some details here in a moment about what that is. And they have actually said to us, okay, get your interconnection wrapped up, go to the town, come back to us with completed proposed documents for the engineering reports and post-closure plans. And we are preparing to deliver those to them. My guess is probably mid-August. But they have been presented the project. They're well aware of the project. We've gone through multiple iterations. We had to do the unenviable task of sending someone to DEC offices to dig through all their files for phase one reports. It was a colossus of banker's boxes in there. But we've kind of gone through that process with DEC. They're well aware of the project. And so we felt comfortable that they're comfortable enough with the project that we could come present it to you all and feel like we're not giving you a red herring here.
So this kind of, like Ryan was saying, the overview of the permitting process, you can see we jump back and forth between the different boards here. So tonight is the intro meeting to the town board. We have met with the planning. We've done a kickoff call. I'm sorry, we haven't met with the planning board. We have submitted to the planning board to be on their agenda, hopefully on August 4th. So that's where we're at right now. As Ryan said, we've already had conversations with DEC. So then we'll be, one of the next steps is going through the process with them. And with that DEC conversation, something to know about this site. Right now, if you look at the wetland report and everything like that, there is a emergent wetland that has been created in this area right over here. You can see the mouse. There's back here. So what happened is over the course of time, the cap had settled because for a few different reasons. Something to note is that all the work that we're discussing is in the top two layers of vegetative support and the protective cover. Nothing is below that liner. So it's just a matter of restoring positive drainage. So this is something that Al Cherry, the owner of the landfill, and DEC have worked on previously before we even came into the picture and are now proceeding with this. So once that work is done, that'll be the existing conditions for our solar array. But it's right on the same area, so it's notable. So what's happening with that is there was settlement, and because of that drainage, the drainage layer no longer worked because the water was going in the wrong direction. It was puddling on top, creating an emergent wetland. DEC flagged this to Al Cherry, and they need to remediate it to restore positive drainage off the cap and remove that wetland. So it's kind of the opposite of what you hear with other wetlands elsewhere where you're avoiding touching them, you want to keep them. This wetland actually poses to be an issue for the landfill, so it's getting remediated prior to our project. That has been approved. Go ahead.
When they pump out all the leachate of the garbage and stuff in the ground, do you expect this, I mean, with the ones that you've been doing on landfills, is that a problem where over 5-10 years that these uneven spots have to be corrected?
Yeah, so when we target landfills to build these projects on, we generally target landfills that have been capped for at least 15 years. And the reason why we do that is because most of that settlement of organic matter happens in the first 15 years. This project or this landfill had the added benefit previously of having a gas collection system in it, which actually speeds up that process. So if you notice the area where that depression was located, it is right in between the two landfills. So when the southern landfill was capped in 2006, if you look at historical imagery, that depression started forming as quickly as 2009. You can see the first kind of whispers of it, and it's slowly gotten worse over time. So right now, to be candid, we're kind of at a critical position where there is standing water there. This repair needs to happen sooner rather than later. And so we're excited to be able to, work with Altori to kind of wrap this all into one big package that can bring multiple benefits to the town. We can repair this landfill in conjunction with them and then make sure the landfill afterwards has kind of an adaptive reuse where there's multiple stewards of the landfill. So that's a good point for us to talk about really what this post-closure plan that we're negotiating with DEC is. The post-closure plan is a document that they already have in place that dictates how the landfill needs to be managed, taken care of, and what happens in case there's damage that needs to be fixed, et cetera. Until now, that agreement has been solely between Altori and DEC. Now Nexamp will join that agreement as a tertiary kind of steward of the landfill. So anything within our lease area, within that 25 acres that makes up the vast majority of the top of that landfill, we will now be at least, I wouldn't say we're the primary responsible party, but we are definitely one of the two primary responsible parties for making sure that any erosion is fixed, any seeding is managed, vegetation cap is being managed in a more proactive manner. So we see ourselves as not only adding value to the landfill, but also being long-term stewards of it.
Is that just the portion that you're putting the solar on, or is that the whole landfill as a one parcel of property?
So we'll be responsible for the portion that we are installing,
Not
which
the
just
rest.
so happens
Yeah.
to be the entire top, the flat part of the landfill.
Right.
So areas where you're
Okay.
talking about pooling, erosion, when vegetative cover dies off, and then you end up with issues like we have now, we will be able to proactively manage those things so that they don't become problems down the line.
Expanding into the Walking River won't be part of it.
I hope
No.
we're gonna have
And
very large,
Right.
very big problems if we end up in that situation.
That's still wetland we do not want to touch.
I got it, I got it.
But just to
So
add
when-
on to that,
so when
to
you-
avoid,
In your book here, you said there was, part of it was capped in 2017.
So yeah, that was unfortunately a mistype there. It's 2006 was the southern landfill, which is municipal solid waste and organic waste. And the top landfill was 1997. So there was just a configuration.
Oh, I see. That sounds like, well, it's not 15 years.
Yeah. So my apologies. Ms. Sheps and I actually noticed that just before the meeting and tuck our tails between our legs.
Got it.
Yep, and then just to build on that about the settlement, there's a lot of due diligence that goes into this design and the different constraints, and that's part of the reason why we approached DEC right away when we started the interconnection agreement, and they gave us a lot of constraints to follow for the design, and this is something that we see on our other landfill projects as well, and something we make big note of is the slope. We're only building in certain slopes, 10%. We have the ballasted system that's placed in specific locations for that reason, to avoid any settlement from this application on top of the landfill.
So Liza, if you wouldn't mind going back to the permitting section, just because I think that this is something that's really important for us to discuss with this body, right? There are different levels of approval here. And this is something that we've discussed with Mr. Hoffman amongst others. This is a little bit of an odd situation because generally speaking, the town engineer and the town planning board would have unilateral control over the engineering and design feedback for the project. In this case, DEC will take a jurisdiction over 99.9% of those things. So that's why we're hoping to pursue all of these approvals concurrently, so we can kind of make sure everyone's on the same page about who's requesting what, what's getting wrapped into what. And ultimately, we feel that this process should be advantageous to make sure everyone's on the same page. To be candid, DEC's standards about this are going to be both more informed and way more stringent than the towns would be otherwise. So at this point, we are planning and have designed our project to comply with as many of the design parameters as we can, given the fact that it's a landfill. So some things like underground conduit, we can't comply with because we can't dig things up. Other things like you can't have stone under the panels. Those in some cases, we might have to ask for variances on if DEC asks us to reinforce certain areas. So there are some oddities to this where we need to be adaptable and we need to make sure everyone's on the same page. But again, we've had these discussions with Mr. Hoffman and others to try to understand how are we going to handle this process together? How are we going to make sure that everyone's on the same page? So to that end, I don't know if anyone has any questions about the project, the process moving forward, thoughts about how you would prefer us to go through this process, keep you involved. Obviously, we're all ears because you'll see a lot of us over the next couple of months.
Great, good. Are you guys fiscally responsible for repairing the cap after you take over?
Within our lease area,
Yeah.
yes. Yep. Yep. So because we will be added to that post-closure management plan as stewards, DEC will be able to hold us liable for this.
An unrelated question. This is 5 megawatts, and I know it's going to be more, it sounds like it's going to be more involved than a normal 5 megawatt
Yeah.
program. Can you make it 2 megawatt profitable?
Yes and
Is there a
no.
breaking point?
Yeah.
Where it becomes profitable or not profitable?
So I think that there are a couple of drivers there.
Not on a landfill.
Yeah, well, to avoid being too political with my response here,
Sure.
I would say the biggest drivers are where are you selling the power back to, and what are your interconnection costs? If you can get those two things in line, then yes, you could certainly make a 2 megawatt project profitable. It just so happens, power prices here are quite a bit higher than they are in Binghamton, for example. So it drastically changes.
No, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
Information.
Any additional questions?
At our last public hearing, that was just last week, there was great talk about the composition of the panels and the fees.
PFAS.
Yeah, PFAS. What is your status as far as where they're made and what's the composition of the panels?
Yeah, so as far as where, right now, this project has been designed with a product which is a Hanwha panel. So this is a little bit of a globalization in a nutshell. It's a Q-Cell, which is a German company that got bought by Hanwha, which is a Korean company, and is manufactured in Korea currently. That's what's been designed with this project currently. With that said, we're quite a ways from putting any panels on this property. And if anyone's tried to build anything recently, you realize there's got to be a great deal of flexibility about what you're going to put where. So I would be remiss to commit to this specific panel make and model at this point as early in the process as we are. To the question about composition, to that end, every single panel manufacturer has a slightly different composition to it, but generally speaking, you can divide these types of panels into two categories, so to speak. There's thin film solar panels, and then there's polycrystalline panels, so PV panels. In this case, we, if it was a condition of the board that they wanted us to meet, we would be happy to commit to one of those two chemistries. In this case, we're definitely going to be committing to a PV panel rather than a thin film solar panel.
Our concern.
Yeah.
Our concern, we were reviewing the other evening, solar panels, and they have PFOAs and PFOSs built into the product. Question we have is, would that flush out over time into the soil? Reason being is that it's carcinogen. And the New York State Department of Health has us, for all our water districts, check our water for that contamination. So if it has it in there, I don't know what that's going to have, how locked in they really are or not. But that's the reason for the question.
Yeah, no, understood.
And, so if you can get them made without a
I would love to say we could, but if you look into it, PFAS chemicals are very common in manufacturing processes for everything from that microphone you're holding to the leathers on your seats. They're extremely common, and that's why, folks call them forever chemicals because they're very hard to escape. In this case, the great irony is we're sitting on top of a landfill. So there is an existing great deal of material, unnamed and untraceable material below us that I would argue would drastically affect any type of testing, soil testing we could do, and how things would be noted there on the site. With that said, at least from my limited understanding, again, I'm not an industrial manufacturer nor am I an industrial engineer, but most of the concern from drinking water comes from industrial processes and other things like firefighting chemicals and other pieces of material there. So as long as we're not disposing of these panels or any of the materials on this site, of which we can't because it's a capped landfill, and the town's decommissioning agreement that we come to terms with this board on stipulates the process for disposing of those panels. At least in my opinion, there's little to no risk for the long-term, health risks associated with the project. But again, these are conversations that we look forward to having over the next 6 to 8 months.
No battery storage.
No battery storage.
Doug, you might have to help me here on this, but with our great big litigation that we had with Altori, and this has really nothing to do with you guys, it's more internal, since we have new attorney, new supervisor. I thought there was something about with the settlement that if in fact the land now can be used again, such as this particular project, there might be some type of rebate that we would be getting from the monies that we paid out.
Yeah, we had we had 300 tax surcharges just for the Altair by itself. Well, over $1.5 million to resolve it all. We'd have to go back and several years ago and have our attorney go through that and make sure that it is the way. I mean, are we going to get a rebate for some of the money that we gave them up front or whatever? Yeah.
So, Laura, you should be aware of that, right?
Taking scribbling furiously.
Yeah, that's job security. There,
I
bro.
just heard banker boxes.
Yeah, it was a whole room.
Okay.
I'm not kidding, a literal whole room of boxes and environmental documents.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we'd love to be proxy to any of those conversations, because as you might imagine, we're not cracking open a piggy bank to build this thing. We have financial partners that are gonna want to understand all the diligence related to this project.
Well, there was a remediation fund that the DEC is sitting on for about $1.5 to $2 million.
Quite a bit more now with interest.
Is it? Yeah, okay, so I'm glad you were aware of
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
I'm surprised, but I'm delightfully surprised. And I'm not sure how that would play into any projects that come, if the DEC is going to release those, but that's something that we need to work on.
Yeah.
Because we have a tremendous amount of expense, and they've been sitting on this money this whole time, so
Yeah.
we need to look at that. I'm taking this back 15 years now.
Yeah, it's been
And I
quite a
know it's
while.
still
There's
there.
most of those settlements, I think that were in 2016, 17, some
Right.
of those most recent settlements, if I remember correctly, but obviously, like I said, we'd love to be party to any of those conversations as a fly in the wall, just because we need to understand the outcome.
That's wonderful, thank you.
The DEC is not taking lead agency on this, are they?
DC almost never takes lead agency on anything. So it is both our understanding and preference that the town does. It's worth noting in this case that there is an interesting wrinkle in the seeker law, an amendment that was made to the law. I think it was section 617, if I remember correctly, where projects on landfills that are less than 25 acres or less are qualified as type 2 actions. So it would actually be an uncoordinated review that needed to be undertaken.
Any other comments? Sean, anything?
No, other than the application received, and it's on the planning board's agenda next week for initial presentation to commence seeker and possibly move to include seeker if it is in fact type 2.
Probably premature, but we'll wind up with a pilot agreement.
That's our intention. Yeah, if you saw on that permitting schedule there, we do anticipate once our at least site design and size of the system is reasonably locked in. Obviously we'll be working with your engineers and others to kind of figure out all the nitpicky things there. But once the system size is locked in, we would anticipate coming back to this board with both decommissioning and pilot agreements to negotiate both of those. It seems like the most advantageous way to go, especially with the checkered tax history that we're dealing with.
I'm not sure, because this is a landfill, and I know that they've reduced the amount of assessed value down very, very far, it's almost nothing, because property is not worth hardly anything, so a pilot program may not even beneficial to people, once you look at the numbers involved,
Yeah, well,
going through the whole process.
our legal counsel
Yeah.
would kick me if I said this, or if they were listening to me say
Yeah.
this, but the reality for us is that there is a significant risk to letting the assessment value ride on these solar projects, because there is no codified assessment valuation for New York State right now. Which means if you have an assessor who says, okay, this is worth $1 million, if they get hit by a bus tomorrow and someone else comes in, we could have a significant operational expense risk under that.
Sure.
So for us, it's advantageous, frankly, to come forward and say to the town, let's figure out what the deal is going to be, whether it's with the town, industrial development agency, whoever. Figure out what it's going to be so we can all lock in our income and expenses over the next 15 years. And that's the path we tend to anticipate taking. So hopefully you'll see us in a couple months with that on the agenda.
Okay, great. Anything else? Thanks, Ryan. Anything? Thank
Thank you,
you.
gentlemen. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I will leave a few cards, and Liza will do the same, just in case anyone has any questions. Feel free to reach out. Okay.
Okay, we'll circle back to Tam now.
I have to recuse myself.
So also worth noting that I have 2 letters of support, one from Healy Brothers and one from Orange Ulster Boces in support of this project. Oh, yeah, Jason.
Okay, Jason Pizzaro from Pizzaro Notes, you're representing TAM. We have Tony Lazavanera, Vice Butler, we're the principals of TAM attendance tonight.
Jason, can we give you a microphone?
Oh, sure. Where are those at? Okay. So again, Jason Pizzaro representing TAM tonight. Good segue here to this project, and thanks for skipping over us when we get here tonight. We just heard from these folks who want to use majority of these landfills, and as we before the board previously talked about using another portion of landfill, so hopefully it's an opportunity to make up some ground on a lot of the area within the town that's probably not been in use for a number of years now. So we were before the board previously. Since that time, we've met with a number of the folks that would be tributary to the construction and operation that we're trying to put together. As you noted, BOCES and Healy had provided letters of support of the project. We've met with them and supervisor, planning board, council recently, and they asked us to come back in and brief the board again. So we're here tonight. One of the items that were a point of concern the last time we were here was the formation of the district and the town's reluctance to form a district. We've worked with our council and I've proposed to form a transportation corporation, which would serve as a means to convey and build a collection system. And looking for some feedback on that operation today as opposed to potential district formation, and to answer other concerns of the board that may come up since our previous presentation, to refresh the board's memory on any of the other items discussed.
I do have some concerns.
Sure.
Mr. Howland and Mr. Lebo are going to talk later on tonight about the shortage of water. And so, for example, some of the things are Dunkin' Donuts on 17M, Gate School Road, 53,000 square foot warehouse, RDM warehouse, 300,000 square foot, Milmar Foods, about a 40,000 square foot increase, and they're already trucking in water. They are trucking in water to make it work today. So There's a plaza that there apartments and retail dining. The Primrose is 30-room, 60-bedroom lodging. Hospitality is 320 rooms. So I go through all of these, okay? My concern is, okay, for example, Boston's, we got the letter from them tonight here, and Healing, okay? When you take their sewage out, their water is coming up out of wells, out of the aquifer. You're gonna take that water out, you're gonna process it, put it right in the Walk Hill River, it will not recharge. We are already short of water. We have a very aggressive build-out plan for 17 out. Okay? Very aggressive. They're gonna want more water than we're gonna be able to provide them. That's a fact. And so when you're running this thing at 500,000 gallons a day of processing, that water is coming from where? It's coming from wells, like at Bosse's. It comes out of wells at Bosse's. They utilize it, and today they recharge it. But tomorrow, when this happens, you're going to take it to the sewer plant, process it, and put it in the Walk Hill River. So we're already short on water. Neil and Frank are going to talk tonight about what are we going to do to approve all these projects and provide them water. And yet this one is very convenient for Mr. Lespinero, it's right across the street. I can see why he would want to do this. But Healy and Milmar and Bosse's, they all want to send it because then they're out of the sewer business and maintaining things. All that water that goes there is going to shortchange someone else. So anyway, I have a major problem with that. I think it needs to be studied thoroughly. My second concern is the transportation company. And then Mr. Lespinero, in 10 years from now, he decides to retire and sell his business. And the person he's selling it to, all of a sudden he has problems with his customers, and all of a sudden legally the town's in between. Because most sewer plants are run by a municipality, a city, a village, or whatever. This is run by a private enterprise.
We'd have to take it over.
We'd have to take it over,
No different than any of the package plants we're looking at also.
Okay, well, that's right, but this is a huge one. This is 500,000 gallons a day. And we also have to provide water to these organizations. I don't mean to talk too boldly about this, but for my prior supervisor, Honey Bernstein, she asked if I would take over water and sewer, and I did for 3 years. I did it for 16 more years. I have a lot of experience, calls, and Joe, you're going to get the calls, Mr. Supervisor, when these people don't have water. I'm talking about homes, private wells, because we're taking all this water out because it's convenient for TAM Enterprises and for using his leachate that's pulled out of the landfill, process that and put that into. It's a big deal. So that's the second item. Okay. The third item is odor. We have Amy's Kitchen is going to be building. Next year, they're talking about 600,000 cans of soup or some. Followed after that, there's going to be something else. They told me when I was 10 years ago, when they first came, they have to get this plant to run like the other plants. The soup is made in Medford, Oregon, at the same amount, about 1.2 million cans of soup. It has to taste the same from both. So when you get the odor, when you're off aim and you get the odor in the air, the hydrogen, methane, and the other one is sulfide. Thank you. Okay. And when that gets into their air conditioning system, it gets into the soup. That's why they fact that they're getting water and sewer remotely from the city of Middletown, but they can't get their air remote. But that was one of the things they stipulated when they came here 10 years ago when we approved their facility. So
What was that stipulation? I'm sorry.
well, clean air. you know, that they can get air. You got Nilmar as a food manufacturing plant, Amy's Kitchen's a food manufacturing, and there's another one here, and then Nilmar wants to expand. Okay, and then this European outdoors facility, possible conversion into food manufacturing. What I'm trying to make is, this is great and convenient. Great and convenient. And oh, by the way, everybody along there is going to want to use it. They'll take the water out of the wells, it'll go to Dam Enterprise, they'll process it. It's going to exacerbate the problem that much faster. So,
Yeah, I think that's a misconception. A lot of the materials that's going to be treated here are both the leachate from Orange County and from Altuve. Those areas are lined, so the leachate that's being removed from there isn't making its way back into the water system.
no, I understand that.
I
I'm
also
talking
would add
about
that,
Orange Ulster Bosse's, the jail.
And those are not in your watershed. It wouldn't make it into the wells from that are adjacent to the site anyway. So that water that would be recharging would not be adding to the wells that are the concern that you're drawing tonight.
Bosse's is right next to the 4 or 5 new subdivisions we built. Woodland Estates, Eva Estates, Creamery Estates, et cetera, et cetera. We've built 500 homes in Goshen in the last 15 years. Okay. And I'm just sharing with you, the supervisor is going to get calls after you build all of this stuff. It's going to have a real negative impact on the availability of water. And we have over $1 billion worth of construction that wants to be built along.
Well, with all due
17.
respect, you have several billions of dollars of infrastructure that is already existing in Orange Ulster Bosse's and the dealerships that are there and those people that are already there. And those folks are asking for this. So you may have, in fact, homes that are looking to come here, or Amy's Kitchen that may be coming in the future. And I guess they were here 10 years ago, but they may be coming in the future.
But they're getting their water and sewer from Middleton.
Sure,
And
exactly.
now Mr. Healy wants to, got a letter here. Oh, I want, take it to sewer, take the sewer.
Well,
Yeah, and yet, where's he gonna get his water? It's gonna impact his water.
in all fairness to
like to-
Healy, they have a
Brian Butler,
septic
Tam
system
Enterprise,
as well.
would like to also respond. I don't believe Amy's Kitchen, their water's going in the ground.
No, I said that. Amy's Kitchen takes.
It's not
care
coming
all
out of the
water.
ground,
It's
though.
the air quality for
And
that.
I'm not sure, I know Haley, Bosse's, they're all here. I believe all their septics are failing. So if you were to drive by one of those locations, you'd see the water on the ground and then it evaporates. It's not going back in the ground right now.
Okay, well, it's being recharged, maybe not perfectly, but it's being recharged.
Okay.
We also talked about building a water district too, as you recall, when this town asked me to do this project, this was not my idea. So let's get this out.
I didn't ask you to do that.
Most
We had
of it
we had a meeting out there.
Come on,
with
we need water, we need sewer.
Hey,
We're gonna have,
excuse
we're
me,
gonna have
excuse me.
businesses in town here.
we did not ask him to build this sewer plant.
I've asked them to build.
Well, fine.
And I've asked them to develop.
Can you just
in
state
water
your
as
name
well.
for the record? This is getting a little wild here.
Well, I take offense
No,
to
no, no,
his
excuse me.
insinuation.
You want
What
to speak?
insinuation?
Doug, I
Wait your
mean,
turn.
you're saying that we're going to have a water problem just because we're putting in this sewer district. Well, we
Yeah.
would like to actually have a water district as well. I mean, there is a need for water and sewer if you're going to have a thriving business community along 17 Ave.
Well, at least Neil and Frank are gonna come in. You're not the only business there. There's all these warehouses and all those other things they want to build. We don't have a reservoir in the town of Goshen. We have an aquifer. The more people pulling out of it and not putting back in is gonna cause a problem. All I'm saying is that they're counter. We're counter. We have more need for water, but yet we start processing the sewage, your sewage and Milmar's and everybody else. It's gonna shortchange your water over time, is what I'm sharing.
The quality of life of the municipality will degrade very quickly over time as our septic systems fail.
Yes.
And it's gonna smell, if you're worried about a sewer district that's gonna be properly maintained, is gonna have more odor than all of our failing septic systems. That's absolute lunacy.
I didn't recognize you, Paul, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I didn't see you.
Okay, well, anyway, I stated a fact, that
Let-
we have a great need for more water, and we're reducing the recharge.
So,
I thought we were gonna address water and sewer to help alleviate that, and
If you take water out, you're just gonna short, and there's so much there,
What do we
Tony.
do? I mean, just like every other municipality in the United States, everybody's on, there's not that many reservoirs around. There's mostly, everybody's on wells around here. I mean, the village has one, but they also have backup wells, and I'm sure they're on their backup wells right now.
yeah.
So
That's what I'm saying,
What I'm
Tony.
saying is, why don't we come up with a plan that works, instead of just saying no. Listen, I don't need to go spend $10 million to build this. I own a sewer plant already. When you guys asked me to build this, I thought it was a great idea.
I don't remember
sure
anybody
you
from
don't.
this town.
And that's
I was in those meetings.
And
I didn't.
I just
ask
want,
you.
let's get past that, because it really doesn't matter. What matters is, we're looking to do a transportation for, so we can at least either proceed and keep moving forward with this, or not. That's what it comes down to. I will invest in doing a water district, developing wells to feed people water, because we think there's water out there. You know, I own 70 acres of property out there. Mr. Gilliam, he butts up against me, the county butts up against me. As far as the odors go, and if you're worried about Amy's Kitchen, they should have bought property next to a landfill and a transfer station. There are a lot more odors coming from a transfer station that's gonna come out of my sewer plant. And that's a fact. I own a sewer plant, I run a sewer plant, I discharge into the Delaware, which is way more stringent than discharging into Wallkill. And I never have a problem. And I've never had odor complaints. So you're more than welcome to come out to my plant.
I can tell you
Let's move
that,
forward on this.
Yeah, that
Let's move forward on this.
that Amy's Kitchen and the odor issue, I really think is a non-issue. The Amy's Kitchen will have an air quality system. The whole interior air is gonna be controlled within there. It's a state-of-the-art facility. It's not I'm sure Milbar has an air quality system as well. You're not allowed to.
Let's concentrate on what's built and what's not built.
When it is.
Yeah, so let's try to move forward on this, because, Doug brings up a good point. Maybe it's time for a conversation about a sewer and water district if we're in that bad a shape, because we have so much growth on 17 now. It's, you have the growth, we have existing businesses in the town, big supporter of the town, Healy Brothers, they have a problem there. It's our job to figure out what the problem is and figure out how we support them. So I'm all for it, moving forward, however we have to move forward. I mean, Jason, I don't know if your company does water studies. Maybe you can share in some of the cost of helping us
Isn't
do a
there
water
much
study.
more efficiency with a larger plant than 15 smaller plants?
Oh, I think
Aren't you
there's-
gonna have less
There's
issues?
obviously economies of scale. There's no question about that. Dan, do you want to have something to say? Dan?
Dan.
Only acknowledged by the supervisor, Jason. I respect it. but
Thank you.
it's his
Sure, Dan,
town.
no problem.
Yes. Is it okay?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Good to see you again, Dan.
Good to see you all.
Dan,
So-
can you just state your name?
Of course. My name's Dan Depew, and I was asked to represent Milmar Foods here today. I work for Holt Construction, and they're our client. So right now, starting about 8 months ago, a lot of it was driven by the pandemic. Many of their competitors had larger spaces where they could keep product ready, available to process right near their manufacturing facilities. And they found themselves at a disadvantage because, as we know with the supply chain, you can't just snap your fingers and get what you need today. We've become the last 15 years, like you could just get whatever you want. So Milmar, right now, they're before the planning board. And I want to commend the planning board and the building department and everyone in the town with working with Milmar. They've been very, very understanding. What Milmar is proposing today is an expansion of some dry storage areas, some freezer space and things like that, because they've been leasing from miles and miles away down in Jersey, and they wanted to bring that closer so they would have better control over their commodities and things that they need to produce food. It's not going to be an increase in expansion in their water and sewer capacity. It's more of just bringing dry storage, freezer storage and things here closer to what they're doing. So I just want to clarify that. I think it's important. I believe in facts like you, Mr. Bloomfield, so we always have agreed on these things when they're factual. So that's important. The issue that Milmar faces is in these expansions and with code and different things like that. The larger you grow, the more regulations are in place, different things you have to put in place in order to meet today's energy code standards, building use standards, all these different things. And it becomes extremely expensive to upgrade your existing facilities, upgrade or build facilities to new standards to meet things. And without the infrastructure and the resources, their investors look at this and say, so you want to spend $20 million investing more in buildings on a piece of property that right now has basically a cesspool septic system. And does this make financial sense for the area? And it's a really great question. So I've advised them as a construction manager to proceed with great caution. Holt Construction this year will do roughly $500 million worth of work across the nation. We are very well-known construction managers, and I'm concerned for them. I also have some knowledge just in prior life of running sewer districts and sewer plants and water and all these different things. And you're right, Mr. Bloomfield, that the water that the town currently offers and that many of these individuals use are drawn from the aquifer. Right now, you know, I mean, it's something that you always have to stay in front of. If you were to drill one well for 2 million gallon system and think that that's going to last for 30 or 40 years without doing anything to it, you're just wrong. You have to be constantly reinvesting in well regeneration. The PPU, the planned purposeful usefulness of any sewer system is maybe 20, 30 years before you have to reinvest it. But the point is that government's purpose is to work together to provide its citizens with things that they individually could not do on their own. And what's happening here is due to not, I think, because of the initiative of LAC, but just because, let's be honest, this area is a little bit on the outside skirts of Goshen, and parts of it has grown over time, and it's not been the focus. I think that local business partners and landowners have said, we have a problem. If we want to be able to survive, we have to do something about it. So local business is trying to fill the gap of the lack of that unified, what normally government would do support. And I really believe something has to happen. I've known Tony Laspinera for a very long time. I've known Brian Cutler for a very long time. I actually hired Jason. I don't surround myself with incredible people. Credible people only. And I believe what they're proposing before you, we're at a point right now where we cannot study it too much more. We can't waste it. Something has to happen, because one of the options on the table for Milmar is go somewhere else. And I would imagine that would be the same for Healy Brothers and a lot of other folks. And when you start to lose your taxpayers and the ones that are picking up the lion's share, your commercial taxpayers, it becomes a devastating effect. And you all know this, but we're at a critical point right now. It's so critical. And I appreciate a couple things. I appreciate the candor of this board to allow a business representative like myself to come speak in an open forum, to speak our opinions and advise you and help and support this and have this debate back and forth as necessary. But we are at a critical point. Decisions are being made today on multi-million dollars of investment of long-term businesses in the town, and it can't wait. And if there's any questions directly about Milmar that anyone would like to know about, I'd be more than willing to help get that information. And the Hoffmans apologize for not being able to be here this evening.
Well, you know, Dan, I appreciate your candor. Milmar is a small potato. Healy is a small potato. We're looking at growth, and that's what Neil and Frank are going to come to us next. We have 22 acre zoning for water. And I just read what they're going to present if we're short of water. So if Tony puts a well in the ground, it's just going to keep, we're going to have to say to somebody, you can't build. That's what I'm thinking about. We just don't have the water.
From my perspective, everybody's important. There's nobody too small. So we
I
have to address them.
Joe, I appreciate
Okay,
it.
well, anyway,
To Milmar, although we're small potatoes, this is a very big potato for our life.
No, I understand that. You're
I mean,
here.
it is
We're
the-
already here.
And I also believe when you want to do something, and it's not just you, it's any municipal government, you can find the crafty, smart way to design it in a way. You've got some of the best attorneys around, a lot of them here in Goshen, they call it lawyers row for a reason. And I believe you could create the mousetrap that works, that takes care of your concerns and limits things that you want to limit it to and limits capacity. But we've been kicking this can down the road to the point where this potato is gonna go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What I'm sharing though, I didn't mean small, I direct, you're here. You can put your warehouse in this, you're still here, okay? But compared to what some of these other needs of the buildings that are being built, that they're gonna share with us tonight. You've been here, you got your water and so forth and so on, as Paul Healy does and others. Okay? But there's a lot of people that are going to be building. And when we start taking water away from BOCES and other places and put it directly at the river, versus it's not working out there, well, let's get it to work. You know, that's my answer to that. Okay.
As a thriving community, I believe it's the board's responsibility, it's the town's responsibility to provide sewer and water to its customers.
So
I mean,
if we have it, we
so, I
will.
mean, Here, you have businesses willing to fund the entire thing. We're not asking for 10 cents out of the town. Town should be paying for this and charging us over the next 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 years. Most municipalities thrive on this kind of thing, are willing to, I mean, I've got businesses all over Dutchess County, Orange County. Every one of those communities, they bend over backwards for their businesses. They put together water districts, they put together sewer districts.
We do.
I
that.
mean, we're like, this is like 1800s.
But we don't have a reservoir.
The town of Wallkill doesn't have a reservoir.
I think both Frank and
Okay,
Dan.
I said my
would be-
piece, I said my piece, my fears. Let's proceed on.
Sure, and I think both Frank and Dan could speak very definitively on the town of Walk Hill, its ability to develop and its water and sewer rates, and that is what has allowed them to develop and their access to water and sewer. And I understand the concern with regards to water, but I mean, you can go back and forth for the eternity. It's a chicken or the egg thing. One has to come first. In fact, Mr. Lazavanera is offering to provide both, but there has to be a starting point. So,
It's not making the water, he's pulling it up.
yeah,
But
but
he pulls it up, there's other people that aren't going to get it, is what I'm sharing. These two, I'd like, maybe you want to sit and listen to what these two fellows are going to talk to on the 17M quarter.
So, I mean,
So I have a couple of questions based on this thing. But first of all, on the transportation company, will that be restricted to just certain customers or anybody on the line can they work into that transportation?
it would be restricted to certain parcels that were designated prior or when it was formed.
But so the real question now is, if for some reason the town does have to take it over, is there any discrimination as far as allowing people in that may want to come in?
You can't allow anybody in that wasn't already in without a reestablishment or a modification of that transportation corporation. And I could speak to that definitively because
Yeah, go
we've done it before
Yeah.
in town of Walkville, and we formed a transportation corporation for an area called Valley View. The town specifically asked us to include one additional parcel because it wasn't able to continue its operations on its own septic. That operator offered to add that one parcel. That's all that could ever be added to that.
So if other businesses, as we said, businesses are going to be built along 17 there, and the transportation company is going to come down and there's a sewer already established, all of the new businesses are not going to be able to join that district or that company. In other words,
The company
we're
would
talking
have,
about growth, so
the company, of course, could be modified, but that is something that would have to go before the board.
so we
Yes.
have oversight. We have oversight on who can be added.
yeah. So
Any modification, excuse me, any modification of a transportation corporation
right,
that has been blessed by the board, because
Right.
statutorily it's required to be blessed. Any change to that corporation, whether it be the capacity of the plant, whether it be
Yeah.
anything like that, would have to come back to the entity that originally approved it to make any modification. So you have those controls. Phil.
I understand.
Yep.
All I'm saying to you is that they own the company. If they don't want to do any modifications or expansion, we have oversight. I'm sure they have the initial decision whether they want, that's what I'm asking.
Sure, yeah, it's a
Do they have the
mutual,
decision?
mutually assured approval or destruction. So again, they're not gonna allow the board to mandate them to grow that facility, but they couldn't mandate the board to make it grow. I think that's a key point. There was one point that I think is really important about water being trucked in, Doug, and it's a point that's directly directed at Millmar. The reason why we're doing that right now is because we're kind of half soaking wet. The investment it takes to drill commercial DEC grade wells and do all of that, when you don't know if you're gonna expand, really need more, whatever you're gonna do, that's a big investment. So it's a temporary measure that they're doing that. And I just wanted to say that it's not that there's not water on site. There have been wells drilled recently all around that area that prove extremely high water yield and high water quality. And there's been pump tests on those that have had very innocuous impact to the aquifer. Thank you.
Yeah, I just didn't know if we were talking modular or if we're talking about future development. And we're stagnant at one particular sewer plant. And there's additional development. Do we go through this whole process with all the new buildings? And
It's in the letter, Phil. It says right here, the proposed transportation corporation is meant to serve the commercial users along 17M corridor
Right.
from New Hampton to the village of Goshen.
Right. I understand that. So I'm concerned that if it's a 500,000, that's where it comes in. That's my question comes in. If it's 500,000 gallons at this particular point, and I'm not sure what will be utilized because you're taking on BOCES and the jail and so many other places. What happens with the additional businesses that locate and they don't have capacity? What do we do with those businesses? If we're talking about growth, then I need to understand how it's gonna work. I didn't know if you're going to modular or what you're gonna do to expand or not expand.
So if there was a business that's not currently contemplated within the parcels that are included in the transportation corporation,
There's a lot of
even
land.
though if they're in the defined region, the parcels have to be exclusively included into the corporation district. So right now, there's a number of projects that are being built. For example, I think there was a report you said they're gonna talk about RDM and a couple warehouses, things like that. Many of those warehouses don't use a lot of sewer. They don't have the traffic flow. They're just dry warehouse spaces. So they may have the ability to have a septic on their site without having an impact. I think it's areas where you have manufacturing like Millmar or a high public consumer use because you have a lot of public coming in and out. Those areas are the ones that are really hurt. And the town would still have the ability to limit growth of a new project if they cannot provide for themselves on a project. We're talking about a lot of existing people that are we're just shocked.
But we have a lot of land
Well,
out
we have-
there, and I'm talking about possibly high-density building, high-density subdivisions.
Yeah, but that
A lot
is
of high density that are gonna require a lot of water and sewer. And
Yeah, sure.
are they going to be eligible to join this sewer district?
There are strong statutes that if the transportation corporation is defined correctly and adopted through the appropriate secret processes and things as such, that can say that it's limited exclusively for commercial use.
Yeah.
Because so that right there is the key linchpin that I feel gets overlooked. And that is really what I think put a lot of people in assuage fears to make sure that is followed.
I understand.
Thank you.
Well, one of the companies we're talking about is Goshen Hospitality's 320 room hotel, 3 hotels for 320 rooms.
Yep.
A lot of water.
Sure.
And two dining areas. And so these are just some of the items that are, and they'll be coming. They'll want water and they will want sewer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then, I'm confused. Are you in favor of creating some type of water district in order to support these businesses?
I think we don't have enough water for all of these businesses. And I think when we hear
So then
from
there's a need to.
our two people from the building office tonight, we'll realize that, hey, we're woefully short of water along 17M.
So wouldn't you agree with that statement that you would want to create some type of water sewer district in order to support that?
The sewer district is one thing.
No.
You
We're
gotta have,
talking two things. Sewer district is different than a transportation company.
Well, let's
So
put it a
district, you
little
have
bit more
to
simply
limit
then.
it.
Would you want to
District, you gotta
provide
let
some provision?
They're two different things.
Sure, understood.
Right, okay,
But
so
would you like to provide some provision for water or sewer in any needs, whether it's corporation or district?
I think
I personally
that's the
think
question.
the biggest issue the board would have is restricting it to commercial use only.
Yeah.
Never any multifamily residential districts ever allowed into that transportation.
We don't want to be discriminatory.
No, I mean, no, okay, so
I
no
know, I'm just
residential,
saying.
I said,
I want to
no
make sure that
residential.
we are.
Also,
No,
your town is the exclusive designator of zoning.
Yes.
The town board, through whether it be a master plan analysis or whatever, will
Yes.
always have the ability to determine what the zoning is and what's allowed to be built there. You could simply say that only commercial properties within the existing district, which don't allow residential development, are allowed within the transportation corporation district, and that you control that with zoning anyway. No, I mean, someone could always petition you for a zone change or whatever, but I mean, there's so much. I mean, you know how that works. That is not a light lift.
No.
So you'll control that for as long as there are cognizant representatives on the board of the same mind and opinion. One day there could be a whole board here who wants to turn the town into something completely different, right? But I think in the near future, in the foreseeable future, the reasonable future, I don't see that happening in Goshen.
And this will be located, the sewer plant is going to be located on the Tory property. Tory Bankville property, is that what
I was
one of the
demonstrated
sites?
to the
Somebody's in?
application earlier that Alteri owns about 9 parcels there. And they were using 2 parcels that were the landfill parcels for the solar field, the solar array, which are
So,
our office and Tony have been aware of.
Right.
There's a great deal of land that's still available.
as part of the lead field?
Well, they're owned in the same,
On the.
no,
No,
Oh, okay.
They're adjacent to it. It's not part of the. it's
Yeah.
not part of the-
not part of the cap landfill.
I would hope not. I was like, okay, I just want to make.
And we
clear,
would
that's all.
subdivide that also, it would be a separate.
So they would have to subdivide, it's not subdivided right now, you would have to subdivide a parcel for the sewer first, okay, all right. Need to understand. Well,
George?
Okay, yeah. if I could-
Hold on, anything else, Phil?
no, go ahead.
George?
Okay, so off the top of my head, there's clearly a need for the likes of Healy's, Milmar, and some of these other things to have a sewer. I'm looking, and I think I'm going to be basically saying most of what Phil has already said. The wild growth that potentially could go out there is what I would like to prevent happening. But there is a clear need for these folks. We've been talking about it for
Yeah.
years. You know, Milmar and Gillies, as long as I've been on the board. I think
Yeah.
It's been, I've been on the board 16 years, so I think there's a way that we have to move forward with something. I think if I'm hearing this correctly, and I guess council can help us out, something like that, was it seems like maybe the transportation district is a little bit more restrictive than having a water and sewer district. So that's what I think in my mind, as I sit here tonight, that I think I would like to go in there. And what would help me a lot is to see how much gallons is coming from Healy's, how many gallons is coming from Milmar's, how many is going to come from the jail. Apparently the jail is willing to do that. I didn't get that sheet of paper. If that's what, I got this one sheet of paper that says 500,000, but I didn't get anything with that.
yeah, it was provided previously, but it is
Yeah.
designated.
So, I mean, we may be talking about, at this particular juncture, most of the capacity of the sewer plant is already used up.
Right.
And we're addressing the immediate need. As far as water is concerned, I believe Amos purchased the lip-off wells, and then they decided not to do it because of the capacity of the problems that may occur with the sucking from the landfill. The county, when they built the new jail, they found that, maybe I'm mispronouncing it, but toluene, 72 gallons a minute. There was toluene in that. So I think it's an issue that getting viable wells in that particular area is going to be an issue. But what I'm here tonight, and what I would like to move forward is address the issue of the people that have the critical need now in the sewer transportation. Lastly, we did it already with Amy's. The bottom line, though, is the transportation corporation ultimately comes back to us.
Yeah.
If Tony goes belly up,
Absolutely.
it comes back to us. So we have to make sure that we do it in the proper fashion.
That's the point of the subdivision, right? I mean, it's
And that's what,
subdivided.
and that's what I think I personally would like to move forth. And I'm very interested in what Frank and Neil is going to say, because I know there's a critical water problem out in that whole area. But the overriding factor for me tonight, then I'll shut up, is I think we have to do something to address the people that are here in the sewer capacity.
I agree.
Yeah, and what we heard from the board when we were here last is that there was apprehension regarding the formation of the district and the lack of discretion. So we went back, again, sat with council and looked at what were the alternatives. And this is the alternative that allowed both the board and the operator owner to exercise some discretion during the formation. And what we did and asked those around, Healy, Nomar, et cetera, is the county, who were all at our meeting. What are your needs of those people, like you're saying, that are here now? And how can we make this work? This was the culmination of that effort.
Let's go back to BOCES. We got the letter, there's 7,500 students or whatever they process every, I don't know. They're in the culinary business. They got lots of kitchens. They've got lots of, to feed all those children and things. When we take that water that they're pulling out of the aquifer to run their operation today, and we say we're now going to put it into a sewer plant, that's the big one. That's the big one. It's not Healy's, it's not Milmar, it's that one. That water is not going to be recharged. It may be poorly recharged today, but maybe they need to work on that, better recharge. But when you take all that water and it goes into the Wallkill River through the processing, we're going to have homes out there, all those.
Again, you're incorrect though, because BOCES is here tonight, and I will tell you that BOCES is already in failure. And
they need to fix it. They need to fix it.
Maybe I should let you explain how they're fixing it. They're building.
Can I say something? So I'm Mark Coleman from Orangeville Cirrhosis.
Yeah, there you go.
Two things. 20,000 gallons a day is our usage, right? 5 days a week, we don't generate water, sewer on weekends typically. And I will tell you, just so the board knows, that we are in talks right now with the Village of Florida. So if this project doesn't go through, it is very likely that we will tie to the Village of Florida. So I just want to make that clear that we can't afford to continue to build our own plant. We have to pay twice. Can't afford to build a plant, and it's just not cost feasible to continue to build septic fields on top of septic fields. So one way or the other, the water has to get out of there. I hate to say that. I hate to don't disrespect Mr. Bloomfield, but it's either got to go this way or it's going to go the other way, because we need a solution. We can't. We're in the school business. We can't keep playing the sewer business. So it's important that we find a solution with the utility so that we can take care of this once and for all and move on.
Thank you, Mark.
All right.
I'd like to bring up a point, Jason, maybe since you're town hall going here. They're all on wells. 100%.
Yes.
100% wells. How much you got? They're 2-3 million gallons a day.
We have the authority to draw 5.6 million gallons a day. The New York State DEC requires that you have redundancy in that capacity, and we are nowhere near even approaching our redundancy in that capacity. Now, there are times of droughts and different things like that where you can lower and raise streams. There's a constant redevelopment plan of about $300,000 a year to go out and redevelop wells that are existing. I mean, it's an undertaking, but it's not, it's not undoable. I mean, we did it when I was there. I think we did it very well. I would believe they still do it very well today. I didn't want to bring up the dairy part of it, but if you go back to the fact that Orange County had one of the largest dairy dairy farms in the whole state of New York because of our proximity to New York City. And where do we think all of that water that came up from the aquifers and the wells went into cows? Yeah, they got rid of some of it locally, but how many gallons of water does a cow have to drink to make a gallon of milk? And all that milk went right down to New York City. You know, so I mean, there's always something coming up, going out, all right? And today, it's just a fact, and I don't think we even look at that, right? I mean, I was the former deputy county manager of Sullivan County, and everyone talked about, oh my God, the traffic from the casino. There were 150,000 rooms, hotel rooms in Sullivan County that are no longer there, you know, today because of the fall off of things. There's an ebb and a flow of everything. I don't think that anything that you guys are proposing tonight it's a fleck of water in the ocean in the big scheme of things, but it really has a major impact on the health, quality, life safety of businesses functioning in the area. I think that's really something that's got to be looked at.
And I know from being in this business, the water and sewer business, that you can do well and you can develop. You just have to come up with a program.
Yep.
You got to redevelop it. And I'm pretty sure the town of Walkville discharges into the Walkville.
We do.
So, I mean, the problem with wells in the town of Goshen, you gotta be developed. They gotta be developed, you gotta be, you know, and rehab. Like any other small.
I mean, the village of Goshen, as everyone knows, went and bought land in the town of Waukeil on the Waukeil River.
Right.
Drilled wells there, I think 300 gallons a minute, and then brought it back to the town of Goshen.
The village of Goshen.
Well, they brought it back, well, the village is in the town, Doug, but yes, they brought it back to the sovereign municipal boundaries of the village of Goshen, but they did it through the town. It can be done if you have the will to want to go do it.
But we have, again, we have 3 aquifers.
I don't even think they're using those wells to this day.
No, I think we're on right now.
Oh,
they're
they started to
using-
use them?
Trust me, they're using.
But we have 3 aquifers. One is abysmal. We have one, I know one doctor's wife, who's bitching and moaning, grown to me for years. She'd only do 1 load of laundry a day. One. Because of it takes that much to recharge her system that they're gonna take.
My well's 32 feet deep at my house.
So when's the last time the town of Goshen was redeveloped?
We have wells in the water districts today.
Yeah, when was
We-
the last time they were redeveloped?
We do them all the time,
All the time.
you know, all the time. They go deeper and then we
Yeah, you
crack them and all
crack
that.
'em, yeah.
Okay, we do that. But these are, we don't have water districts out here, and we're gonna hear from these 2 gentlemen tonight that the water in that aquifer is inadequate. And so we need to, that's what.
Well, they need to move forward to go to the planning board. They don't want to spend any money unless we're giving them the nod that
I
we're not
have no
gonna turn
problem
this.
with that.
Yeah, So-
I'd be curious as to how many gallons right now we're using of sewer. What we're talking about as far as gallons to see. I don't know if we can get a hip shot on that, but those are facts that we should really kind of base.
I believe that Tam has collected.
297,500. Philmar Foods, 40,000. Orange Hollow,
Hold on,
500
It's
gallons.
okay, it's okay. I just need to.
Yeah, this was provided, so I'll go through them. John Deere, Healy.
Hold on. I didn't ask you to go through. The rest of the board wants it to go through. Fine. I just asked you, you said 290,000 gallons.
so
And
Yes.
And any of the new people that are being brought on, does that include the jail and so on and so forth? All the new developments that are coming.
It includes the entities that we've referenced. So I'll go through the list and not the gallons, just so you have an idea of those that are included. It's about-
Jason, if you could just provide that to us.
Yeah, just provide it to
Yeah,
us.
just provide it to us.
It's in the letter.
It's in the, it was in the original.
It's in the letter.
It was in the original presentation from
You
a
mean,
couple months ago.
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
okay.
ago,
It
yeah,
was a
okay, fine.
spreadsheet. that-
So
locally,
yeah.
we're saying that 300,000 gallons is already spoken for.
Right.
And you'd be building
That's what I
capacity
wanted to know.
to 500,000 for potentially other commercial places that may want to make. And that includes BOSI's, and that includes the jail,
Jail.
the ones that you have there.
The ones that we have here include those uses, but when you build a treatment plant, it has fluctuations in flow. It's a diurnal flow pattern. It doesn't, there's not a steady flow coming in all day. Like Doug just mentioned, there's somebody at home doing wash, or in the morning, you're all getting ready at a certain time of day, and you're all getting home and cooking dinner at a certain time of day. That's maybe changed slightly in the last 4 years or 3 years, but it's still a diurnal flow. So that means that the plant has to be designed to handle those daily peaks. So
Okay, so if you're taking in 300,000, you just can't build it at 300,000.
No.
You gotta build it
No.
at 5.
Yes, so there's some flexibility there, maybe 100,000 gallons or so for daily
Infiltration,
use.
infiltration as well.
Well, infiltration, I mean, we're building a new system, so there's, you know, like
Shouldn't
you'll
be
look at
much.
the Village of Goshen system, there's, you know, a terrible problem with infiltration, but you'll look at the town of Walkill system and there's very limited infiltration because it was built in 1960 later.
And a lot of mitigation for I-9.
Sure. So this is a new system, so it's not gonna be subject to nearly as much infiltration.
No, I understand. The reason I asked how many gallons is because there are peaks and valleys. We know because we went through this in the village. They exceeded this BD's permit. We always had to be fined. And we built a new sewer, and now I'm still paying for it because I live in the village. So what I'm really looking to understand is how many gallons that we are accounted for now, which you told me is 300,000. I don't know how many more that are existing that aren't on the list that are gonna come into this system, which may be the jail and maybe BOCES and so on. Let's say another 100,000 gallons so far. I don't know. I'd like some data on that as to how many potential gallons are coming in. If we
This
know how many
includes those.
gallons are coming in. Those are, because since you gave us that list, I'm sure we have more businesses that are coming, some hotels and so on and so forth. I don't think all of that's included in the list. I can see.
But it would be an unknown, it would be an unknown for anything that hasn't been built yet.
Not built,
Yeah,
but that's
projected.
projected in front of the planning board. We have lots of applications.
No, we know who the client, we know who the businesses are that are
Right,
coming
right.
on. We wouldn't know what their usage is. We can.
We're gonna know that
Well,
tonight. They're gonna be
Okay,
presenting that to
so
us.
what I'm saying,
I think we're aware that there's gonna be a presentation tonight on what is, you know, proposed to be coming to the town. But what we're really here tonight for is what is already within the town.
Mhm.
And I think that's what's before this board tonight, not what's coming down in 3 to 5 years. I think what's leaving in 1 to 2 years, if not service, is what we're looking at.
if we're looking at expansion, and that's what we're talking about, and we're talking 3 to 5 years, is like a drop in the bucket. That would be counterproductive if we just built a plant large enough, had a transportation system that can only take 500,000 gallons. And we have a lot more commercial and a lot more people that want to use it. What do we do with those people?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Bill, in
Yeah.
defense of what Doug is saying, I would actually like to see that we're going to have this transportation district or whatever we're going to call it. It should be sewer and water. We all have wells now. We're all pulling it out of the aquifer. Some are deeper, some are shallower. But I think if it was done in a municipal fashion, we would have better control of it. And I don't see why we would need to have, just do this sewer district now. Why don't we just incorporate it with a sewer and a water? And do the exploration and do what we really should be doing to develop the community.
I agree with what you're saying. My only concern is, like you said, Mr. Lyons, you've been here for 16 years. Milmar's been in their location for probably 40, you
Yeah.
know. No changes come. Sometimes the seek for, you know, the old saying of perfection shouldn't be the enemy of good. I think sewer would be good. And I don't disagree with you. You're right. But I think when you make it too big and too complex, and then this one says this and this, and we just don't
Never
move
happens.
anywhere.
It doesn't happen.
The only thing that's gonna move at this point is businesses. They're gonna move. Because nothing's happened.
So-
You do the sewer first and use the same template to do the water.
Listen, there's no better way to duplicate a system than a perfectly good working system. I think everybody's just leery of it right now.
Okay, so.
George, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so I mean, we basically said this tonight, so I just want to reiterate my mind, because sometimes I have to repeat things to get it straight. We're basically capacity of the list that you have at 300,000 gallons. You build a factor into it, in this particular case, it's 500,000. We will get a list then for this transportation corporation of the people that are in, right? Whoever they are. They'll come before us and no one else gets in. Unless we come back and say, okay, so-and-so XYZ company, yeah, you can come in if there is capacity. So that's what I'm looking to do and looking to buy into, because as I said before, I'm really very concerned about the existing people now. And I think this is the first step. Maybe we go on to water in the future. But at this particular point, I'd just like to address the people here. So am I correct in my thinking here? Great.
Yes, we're trying to do this constructively, so we'll provide that list, and if there's somebody that we've missed or overlooked that the board is asking us to include, we'd be glad to do that as well. But again, we've tried to approach everybody who we thought was, you know.
But essentially, at this particular point, there's really not that much room. Because you have to build in some redundancy, and you're at 300,000 already, right?
Yeah.
So basically, the list, we kind of have a kind of good idea of the people that are going to be on the list.
Yeah, because we've been working on this for over a year and a half, just internally.
If I can say something, I'm looking at, I have no problem with Healy and Wilmar, even Bosse's, it's not working. But what I'm seeing here, you want to build this thing large enough for, the proposed transportation corporation is meant to serve the commercial users along Route 17 corridor from New Hampton to the village of Goshen. That's unknown. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. We probably do not have the water for that. So if we're going to talk, as Mr. Healy would like, a water supply, and fine, but we ought to do it with what's there. Not, we need to know more information tonight and tomorrow and the next day of what these companies are going to want. I mean, there's some of them up there they're going to talk about tonight. There are lots and lots of users of water.
Yeah, but at this particular juncture, they're not in it.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so
I'm saying.
We're here asking for your input, so I'm getting a certain input from you, Mr. Lyons, and I'm getting a different input from you, Mr. Bloomfield. So I'm just asking that we get a clarification on what it is that you're looking for.
Well,
Existing things not proposed all the way from New Hampton to the village.
That's a qualifying statement, but there's a quantitative statement that was already provided that is the exact list that Mr. Lyons has requested that was provided.
So,
Okay.
I mean, you got to understand though, George, it's going to take 2-3 years to build it. All the businesses that are planning right now will be built and up and running. That's what I'm saying.
Well, true, but, and again, I'm not saying, okay, we have the list, and the list is the list. What I am concerned about is wild growth with all sorts of different types of things. And I'd like the opportunity to be able to, since we're doing the transportation corporation, to be able to say, yes, you folks can come in. It makes sense to come in, but there might be somebody who's there that
George,
doesn't make sense.
Couldn't those other people just make their own package plant up?
Well, it was
I
said,
mean, if they're big enough.
it was said tonight that some of the ones have such a low flow because they're, big, like a big box, that it may be,
They might not need it.
yeah, it may be cost effective for them to do
If
that.
they didn't need it, they wouldn't care about being in our transportation district anyway. Right. If they're big enough to need it, like this hotel, that if they were, or something like that, then I would think that they would have capacity to build their own. And, or they wouldn't have bought.
What I would offer you
That's
is
what you're trying to
that
avoid,
if you're telling me tonight that you have a hotel or something that's approached you already, and you're aware of it, that we're willing to include that at your discretion.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yes.
that's exactly what I'm saying.
So we're in complete agreement. We just want to provide that list to you. And if you say, hey, Jay, add these guys because we know that they're before the planning board, then we're ready to do that. And if we need to go from 500 to 600 to accommodate that, there's not a problem to do that, but we need that direction so we can reapproach.
So you're not capped at 500,000 gallons.
That's the number based on what we have assessed as a group and looked at who has responded to us. But if you're coming to me and saying, Jake, I need this other 100,000 gallons because there's these 3 applicants that trying to set it before us and we're in favor of them, or we expect that they're going to reach an approval with the planning board, a separate entity, so you're not 100% sure, but would you include these? We can do that, but we need to know that that's the direction that we're going in. We thought from our last meeting that there was, again, the trepidation and hesitation that goes along with the district formation. So we've amended the proposal to give you that flexibility. And we're willing to accept that guidance, but we need at this point to know that that's the direction that you're asking or allowing us to proceed.
Everything you said with the caveat of this, if there's someone who's proposing a hotel, let's say it's way over here, and what they're talking about is in that corridor that Doug's kind of defining. I know it's expansive, but qualitatively it is, but quantitatively not. we would advise you, knowing your concerns about residential and high density, that we don't want to include them because you have to cross through 3 zonings to get to there, and it could cause a problem. This has to be done with a scalpel, not a broadsword. So there may be someone who's like, oh, they're kind of close, but the zoning's a little different where they are, and you might not want to have them in this corridor. You understand what I'm saying? Because the other thing that you control is the zoning. And we want to make sure that your wishes and what we're partnering. We want to make sure your wishes and what you're trying to do for your vision, we don't jeopardize anything by adding somebody in, because it seems like a good idea, but it compromises the.
We'll make
initiative.
sure that you don't.
Okay.
So the goal here tonight is to make sure that the board is okay with them moving forward to the planning process.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Exception to me.
But we need to go and work on our
You
transportation
do.
corporation before we even go to the planning process.
Understood, but I think your goal, Tony, tonight is to make sure that we're gonna back this moving forward, correct? Before you spend any more of your hard-earned money into it.
Yeah, we need to make progress on the transportation corporation itself. We cannot go to the planning phase
Understood.
until, and the planning board.
That happened real quick, and maybe
Of course.
that's some clarity. The proposed size of plan includes the current projects. You asked whether there may be some projects that would be included that are coming up the pipeline. These gentlemen are going to speak up. You're talking about staying within the zoning. So an easy one would be Goshen Hospitality, right? It's right next to the jail. That would be a potential one. You want to know about potential projects in addition to what's currently in place, so you can then potentially go back to the DEC
Right.
and assess it before you go into planning.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, it, to some degree, but we need to move forward with our transportation corporation irrespective of whether those things are coming before the board or not.
Right, but they're asking about additional capacity for projects that are coming that
Right.
they're going to talk about. So
Right.
before you go back to the DC or before you go into planning, you want the blessing of the board. I'm just trying to.
Mr. Brady, a question for you on the legality of creating a transportation corporation. Does the town board have to set a public hearing for the creation of said corporation or the approval of that, or no?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I would imagine so.
I would think
Based on the,
Yes.
based on the
So-
restricted nature of.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
So I mean, certainly, I think what we're looking for from the board is the acknowledgement that yes, a public hearing will be set in the future, and that would give us time to prepare for that public hearing. I think that would move the needle forward, give them the confidence to put that investment. Right, Tony?
I'm not gonna do anything with this until I see the proposed plans and what the transportation company's got. I'm not gonna set a public hearing.
That's
If you're
what I'm
looking
trying to
to do one
clarify.
tonight.
No, not to set it tonight, but to know that
Yeah.
if we provide you with what you're looking for, Bill. you
Well,
have
no,
the-
we'd have to do it, yeah,
Okay.
of course.
But do you know
So
what,
the-
you're still trying to figure out what they're looking for? Is that, I mean,
I'm still trying to figure out, you're 100% right,
Right,
because
so-
I think what we provided, I thought what we
you
provided.
have a baseline in place, which is
Why
what
don't
is
we do
in
this?
existence.
Why don't we do this? But if you don't mind. why
No,
we
I
do
don't
this?
mind.
Why don't we say for the purposes of your presentation tonight, that we're in favor of
Yes.
moving forward. We'd love to hear what Neil and Frank have to say as to how many other clients are coming into the area. Then we can come back, assess everything in an overall picture. And give you direction then. Is that fair?
Yes, entirely.
That's good.
I mean, from a cost basis, as Mr. Healy has pointed out, if there's somebody who is willing and ready to go, it only reduces the cost for everybody else who's within the district
Understood.
or
Yeah,
the
understood.
transportation corporation. So by
See,
all means.
From my perspective, I know that we're trying to limit who come and go in it, but I think we leave ourselves open to litigation if we don't allow everybody along that corridor the ability to come into that,
Not
if they
necessarily-
need
Not
to,
necessarily commercial versus residential, though. If you're talking about.
only commercial.
Right,
along
but
that
that's what I'm
corridor.
saying, it's not, that's.
So, right, because the Transportation Corporation is going to be designed solely for the use by commercial clients, if that's legal.
And I was just gonna say, we have to make sure that that's legal.
Right.
That part, restricting it to commercial versus residential, I believe is legal. It's a question of whether or not someone in the corridor that's commercial.
Right.
Has to be included.
Also.
Right, so then we get into the fringe areas, including projects that are coming to the
Those are my
pipeline, that are
original-
moved along far
My
enough.
original
Sean, I don't want to put
Well,
you on
that's
the
why I'm
spot, but
just
if you
trying
want
to
to add
wrap it up
anything.
into it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Sean.
Just one quick item. There was some discussion regarding going to the planning board. My recollection was this would be a special permit by the town board, and the planning board would not be required. Has something changed? In that regard?
Well, I think what we're getting at right now is that the town board and all we're looking for right now is the approval or authorization of formation of the transportation corporation. So the special use permit or whatever may be necessary to construct the treatment works or any of the facilities that's on the property itself. I think there's going to have to be a special permit issued for that or a zoning amendment that would be needed for that. Would have to go before the planning board and then maybe be bounced back before to this board.
That's at the heart of my question.
Yeah,
So
but
there's two mechanisms that this board could allow this. This use isn't permitted in the zone, obviously. This board has special permit authority to allow the use of an unpermitted use in that zone. Alternatively, this board could change the zoning and send it to the planning board. I didn't know if you were suggesting that they should consider simultaneously changing the zone because the planning board's mentioned 3 times.
no, at this point, all we're looking to do is work on the corporation.
They will have to go for the subdivision.
Subdivision would be at the planning board, yes.
They're gonna go to the planning board no matter what.
Yes, but a subdivision is different. approval
I
structure than
understand,
site.
I'm just saying, part of this thing will be going before. the planning.
All right, I think we got a plan.
So now I'm a little confused. We had a situation earlier tonight, I'm sure this was said. We could have a list of people. You have the list.
It's March
It
10th.
amounts, what?
March 10th meeting, they presented the packet from the March
I
10th.
understand.
meeting.
Just hear me out. So what I heard earlier today is 300,000. And we have the list of the people at this particular juncture that are going to be part of this transportation corporation. Now, I hear, well, we're afraid we're going to be sued because we're not allowing everybody in that's commercial. I'm not willing to go that route. I'm willing to address the situation with the people that are here now to the tune of the 300,000. If it's going to be with, okay, you got to let everybody else in from this list here, that was not what I was told earlier.
No, and that's not what we're proposing. So I want to be completely clear. This is a private transportation corporation. So you are not responsible to provide any individual or particular lot service. It's Tony and Tam's responsibility to provide the services to the lots that are specified, pre-approved as part of the transportation corporation.
That's what I thought. And that's what, all I said was, is we're gonna be hearing from our 2 building inspectors about all the businesses that are potentially coming in here. So
Right.
there
And
could
they
be
may, well,
potentially other things.
they
That's all
may
I
get
said.
in or they may not get in.
Correct, exactly.
Well, my problem, again, I want to keep
Well, that's
repeating
what
it.
I'm, that's why
I know what you
that's why
hear,
I'm
but I'm
addressing
not
the scenario.
sure legally if we can exclude other commercial. I don't know, but we'll look, we have to.
We
we'll have
need to
look at that.
understand what the water requirements are. What this
It's kind of a
evening.
moving target there to give
It's
you
a
an
moving
answer on that.
target,
So, I mean,
absolutely.
The,
sorry, Doug.
Yeah,
but
Because guaranteed, it's not only this list.
Yeah.
That we're gonna be talking about.
Right.
big list.
Once the word would get out, hey, we're gonna give sewer now to everybody out to New Hampton. This list will be 3 pages long.
That's not really how it works.
Well,
well,
I
that's
know it
what's,
doesn't,
that's
and I hope
what's
it
put in
doesn't.
here, Tony.
That's what
We
I'm
have
trying
to
to
figure
address.
out-
That's
I
what's
want
here.
specifics as
He
far
gave
as
you a pretty good,
people
he
that are
gave
gonna
you a
get
pretty
in.
good idea in the town of Walpole. So Valley View has enforcement. And you're probably 4 miles away, 5 miles away.
It's 2 miles
Yep, 2 miles to the district.
to the Michigan corners, yes.
So nobody's allowed to tie into that enforcement. That's a prime example. They have multiple homes, manufactured housing. They have a pump station, that pumps all the way to the town of Walpole, by Casamia. And nobody else, I think one other person.
We
that was-
and we know that already because we have 2 force mains, one for the county going out
One for
to
the
Florida,
county
and
in
one for
Florida,
Amy's
right.
Kitchen going to Middletown.
Right.
So we're well aware that it requires town board approval to get onto
Just
that.
like my plant in PA is very, I think I told you before, the plant in PA is regulated by the state. And I answer to 2 bodies in the DEP and also DRBC. And, I can only truck in sludge, prevent sludge and or household waste. That's it. So we can't take industrial. We can't even take town of Walkville if they got, you know, because they got a lot of industrial.
Right.
So we can't take their sludge at my plant. That's just the way it is. So there is rules out there and we have to follow. And I produce, let's say, biosolids. So, I mean, I know how to do this, and there is a way to do it, and there's a way to do it legally and properly. So the town's not gonna get liable. That town's not, Matamoros is not, they're fine. They're happy to have me out there. I'm a taxpayer. So everybody else here. You know, we got a water problem in the town of Goshen, then let's develop walls. The answer is not to do nothing. The answer is to do something.
You know, when
When we
I'm,
gotta develop walls, we must develop walls.
Okay. I'm okay with the existing people, Healy, Milmar, et cetera. Okay. What I'm really perturbed about, and we were talking around it, and is the proposed transportation is meant to serve all community, commercial users along 17M, from New Hampton to town of Village. That has got to come out.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mr. Bloomfield, I believe when that cover letter was written,
Yeah.
it was more to give an indication of to where in the town and for who. It wasn't to say it is a guarantee that what we're proposing is from one end to the other. And I understand why it upset you. And it
Yeah,
upset me
because we
too.
don't have the water for all of
No,
those.
no, no, and it's a valid point, and I'm sure we're all remiss that we put it in that letter.
We are.
All right, so,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
You limit it to what you got in the 300,000
Yeah,
gallons, I have no problem.
You're right.
Very good.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
But you know, it was a very good discussion.
Oh, yeah.
You really a good discussion.
Amount of gallons?
Yeah.
You only say it's 500,000 gallons or 600,000 gallons, and if somebody wants to come in and is gonna use 1,000,000 gallons, but we don't have it.
Part of our DEC.
Yes.
But if someone comes in with 50,000 and you got an extra 50,000, why would we want to turn them down?
That's why we're doing this next discussion about what is the priority of this.
That's exactly right.
It's commercial, and if it's within you're managing it, your business, you have the capacity to do it. I mean, let's face it, it would lower the expenses for everybody that's participating if we were near capacity rather than we're at 50% of capacity.
But one of the other things, Paul, is we have, it's just not commercial, we have people coming in for residential things along here too, big ones. Hundreds of, rooms and
Yeah,
apartments,
we
et cetera.
limit that.
And- But the question has come up, legally, can we preclude them from doing it?
I'll provide it. I gave what I thought when it was originally asked, but every time it's asked, there's more data in the analysis. So I just suggest we table it. I believe it can be done. I've asked for some information from a person that was in the private sector and public sector that has created these. So I just asked that answer be tabled. Allow me to get a proper answer for you. Okay.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you very much.
Appreciate everybody's time tonight. I apologize again for being
Thanks, Mr.
late.
Yearly.
but Thank you.
Coleman, thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, is the building inspector's report up next? I'd love to hear what they have to say.
I got one thing in front of it. That's a
Well,
quickie.
Can you actually go to that? Because I just got a question for someone.
You want me to go to that first?
Yeah, go to that now.
All right. We're gonna skip over 4, and we're gonna go to number 5, review and discuss the projects proposed on Route 17 west of the Village of Goshen and the potential impact to traffic, water, and sewer. Neil, Frank?
I'm not sure I should say thank you or I'm leaving.
Yeah.
But for those who don't know what we're talking about, we're really talking in this area about the 17M corridor from really Hartley Road on up 17M and up the western side of the village and almost all the way over to the Walkhill River. The reason we're looking at that is because that's one watershed in the town out of 14. And so we have a lot of commercial development being proposed right there, right now. I'll cover those, but back in 2003, I believe it was, we had a water study done townwide by Shore Department. They came up with some the tabletop analysis that they did based on the recharge that they can anticipate in the watersheds, based on the withdrawals out of there at the time. They come up with some numbers as to how much more water we have from those watersheds and how much water is available in the watersheds. And they also, as a consequence of that, when we're talking about residential uses, they come up with how many acres per unit or per house. in this watershed, which is known as watershed number 50. Why it's 50, I don't know, but anyhow, that's watershed 50 in the report. They said that there's a remaining capacity of 40,000 gallons. Okay, they were suggesting at that point in time that based on the size of the area, that you could handle about one house for every 22 acres of that. If you're going to develop it totally out with just houses. Okay, you have to realize that some of that is the Audubon Society, so there's no recharge there. You go north of town, north of 17, that whole area by Axworth and all that, there's an awful lot of wetlands there. So it's an awful lot of area that's not really recharging in that area. Hence those numbers. Since that report was done, there's been a number of projects in the area. One of the projects happens to be Tam, who built over there. He's using some water now. Orange County Chinese Christian Church is building now. They haven't started using anything yet, but they have about 1,000 gallons. And we had about 15 houses built in that area. So right now we've taken down, I don't know how many gallons Tam is using, but roughly we've taken down probably about 6,000 gallons of that 40,000 gallons. So what we go to now is that in that whole area from Hartley Road on up 17 to the intersection by Stewart's and Hilly and all that, Millmar, and then also going over to Goshen Hospitality. But Goshen Hospitality is the end of 6.5 Station Road in Cheechunk, right there. Parcel that comes down from the jail property or from 911 center property. So that has a proposal there for Goshen Hospitality you've heard about. When you take all of those projects into account, the total withdrawal is roughly 100,000 gallons of proposal. Now, if we go back to the thing that the report says we only have 40,000 gallons to go up there, and we already had some out of there, we're going to come up with a negative balance in that watershed, which means that ultimately, if the report's correct, ultimately we're going to start draining down the watershed. We're going to be taking out at least 60,000 gallons more than we should be. So 60,000 gallons a year is going to, no, 60,000 gallons a day is going to start dropping in there. And so the watershed should start dropping. That means it's going to have an impact on the Audubon Society's wetlands there. It means it's probably going to have an impact on all the wells in the area, including Healy, including Millmar. All the existing wells in the area will probably have to start competing against each other. That's the issue that's right here right now. My caution to the town is that if we don't do something here right now to deal with the water issue, and I'm not going to deal with the sewer issue, I'm going to deal with the water. If we don't do something right now with the water issue, we're going to have a real problem over there for all the businesses that exist and all the businesses that might be coming in, and anybody who's proposing to develop in the future. We have that negative right now. So we have to decide we're not going to allow any more development in the area, or we're going to say just compete against yourselves for the biggest amount of water that you can get. Whoever has the biggest well wins, or we have to come up with some other answer to get water into there. Yes, Doug.
This Trivali Plaza.
Yep.
Who is that? What's that all about?
That is apartments and retail and dining area. I'm not going to go in the names. Right there at the corner.
But how big is that?
It's asking for 19,926 gallons a day.
Okay.
And in there, they're roughly, they said that they can recharge roughly 2,000 gallons. Don't hold me to those numbers exactly. When I did this map,
But that's not considered commercial. I mean, industrial or whatever. What?
there is no proposals right now in that whole watershed for residential uses. Okay, it's all commercial of some sort. If you count, we have restaurants, we have hotels, we have warehouses, we have a number of things. So it's all considered commercial. 3 of those projects have told us in their EIS, we're at that point right now, 3 of those projects have said, we need more water than we can get back to the ground. So there's no answer to what's about it. Some 19,000 and 2,000. One is 70,000 gallons, and I'm going to put 13,000 gallons back into the ground. So 3 of those projects are already saying we're going to be in the negative. We need to get water from somebody else in the watershed, or start taking it out of the bottom. Okay, all the other projects right now are saying, hey, if I need 5,000 gallons, I can recharge 10,000 gallons or whatever it is. So all the others and every project we've ever approved in town has had a positive balance. So we've always, everybody and that we've approved, as I always said, we have more recharge than what we need to take out of the ground. These 3 projects are not that way. This whole watershed is getting to the point where it's going to be a real problem with water.
How do they have more? Is it just because of the size of the property and rent? How do they have more recharge than they put more in than they?
Yeah, let's, and I'm just gonna make up numbers, okay? If I can recharge 1,000 gallons an acre, and I happen to have 2 acres, and I only need 1,000 gallons for my house, I'm gonna have an excess of 1,000.
So it's rainwater that's recharged.
It's rainwater that's recharging, but not entirely, because in our study, they also anticipated that most of the town is going to be back in the septic systems. The history of the town 23 years ago, in 2003, was really that almost no development in town was going for sewer and water systems. That is changing right now for a couple of our residential projects. We just had Heritage Estates. We have Rieger proposing one further out that's going to be sewer and water. And we also have Maplewood that's going to join us with sewer and water also. So those are the 3 exceptions that on that. But otherwise, everybody was going to go to septics and therefore to some recharge. You don't get 100% recharge out of your septic, but you do get roughly 1/3 or 2/3 or something like that.
When was that study done, Neil?
It was done in, I believe, 2003. It was done by Short Farm. It was done prior to our whole rezoning in 2004. It was part of that study into the comprehensive plan. It was reconsidered back in 2009 when we did our zoning again. And it's still part of our zoning. It's part of our comprehensive plan. It still needs to be considered. This is not to say that there's not water in the town of Goshen. It's just saying it's not there in that watershed. Okay, there are other sections, there are other watersheds you can identify here that do have water. There are 2 watersheds we have in the town where the village of Goshen's taking water. Okay, we have 2 reservoirs, both of them are in 2 different watersheds, and the village of Goshen's taking water out of there. The report does say we should watch to make sure they don't overdraw that, but look, we have water in some parts of town, but you have to be able to move it from one to the other, and the town's not stepping up to say, not going to step it up, to say, all right, we're going to provide and have it well over here and bring it over to there. So we're stuck with, we either have to stop development in this area. I think we have to stop development in this area, or we're going to have a real problem for the existing businesses and the new businesses. You get in some other areas where, in other parts of the country, where the whole water body goes down, you get to the point where some of the grounds have subsided. You go to the point in Texas where it's just the person with the biggest straw wins. So you go deeper and you go with a bigger pump and you just dry up your other neighbors. I don't think that's the way we should be going, but that's not my answer though. Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
any questions?
Mr. Supervisor, does the town require pump tests for any new commercial applicant? And do they test adjoining wells to see the impact on those wells?
Yes.
We do.
Yeah, yeah, we do. I mean, what that doesn't necessarily tell you though is if you're far enough out and if you don't impact the wells, you can still be taking more water than you can recharge.
Yeah,
True.
Yeah.
So what's your position? What do you suggest?
My suggestion is the town has to either stop development in that corridor, in that whole watershed almost, particularly if things aren't balanced. If you have an unbalanced site and you're going to need more water than you can recharge, you're going to have to look at possibly stopping it, or you have to figure out some other way to get water into that watershed. I don't know if there's a water, any other way we can get it. If you can get water from the village, you could possibly do something like that. The one weird thing that we always consider when we talk about getting water from the village is that we're taking water from the village that's theirs, and really they're taking water from us that's theirs, and we're just going to take it back. So it's not entirely like we're stealing from the village, we're getting back some of the water we're giving to them.
They're within the town anyway.
Yeah.
Right, I understand.
But that would
Except for
require
what they
additional.
stole from us, but,
The village is not going to support commercial clients without having the ability to collect on defaulted payments through the tax system.
Yeah, that's a different animal. I was just covering the study, but unless we get some water from somewhere, these projects are going to have a real problem.
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing we should be doing is looking at an up-to-date report, and it's 26 years old. You know, we should be paying an engineering firm and a hydrologist to go out and look at every one of these watersheds and seeing if we're looking at the same data.
You know, one of the other things, I managed two businesses out in San Jose, big business. And we ran out of water. City of San Jose couldn't provide us. We had to start recycling. I'm telling you, water, that's why I get so damned excited about this. It's the quantity of water, it's not the sewer. You start pumping it, like, Tony, one of the things I would ask, can you build your sewer plant instead of putting it to the Walkill River, take a certain percentage and put it back into the aquifer?
There's probably a way to do that. Probably-
I mean, we had an engineer from Yankee Stadium said, he came in here about 10 years ago when we were talking about Young's Grove. Reason why we said, well, it's a little package plant there because you can put it right back in the aquifer. Technology is there. So there's things that we can do. But folks, we don't want to run out of water. That's why I get excited. For you, Paul Healy, and any Milmar or anybody else.
Where does he go to watersheds that have water?
I'd have to look at, I can start working at it. I think
Echo Lake?
Echo Lake, no, Echo Lake's not in our town.
Watershed
Right
49.
on the,
Yeah, it's right on the edge. Yes, it is.
So at one time, we had to bring water in from Lake Glenmere. I was on the board when we bought the pipes,
Right.
Army surplus pipes, and ran them from Lake Glenmere all the way down to the town of Goshen. So this is not a problem that just happened to arise now.
The jail like that idea so much they didn't say.
That's the other, I mean, we didn't talk about that, but that's the other spot. We have water coming into town from Glimmer if we could somehow figure out to do it.
So we're gonna
The
look
pipe
at
is
it.
there, right?
The pipe's there right now. I'm not sure how much they can give up.
What about alternative wells?
I think you can. The question is, right now, if this study is accurate at all, you have to go outside of that watershed to be able to bring water from another watershed into there. Before I ever got here, 20 years ago, the village just about got crucified, I believe, when they talked about going down to the Black Dirt area and bringing water to the village from there.
Yeah, I was crucified.
That's until you get back. But I think it's true. I was there.
It's standing, though.
But
I know, I know.
That's why I asked that question.
Okay.
And that's a question that hasn't been done by, I think within the town, I think the code says you can do it. We could try to work with you to come up with, I mean, I can give you the numbers. The question is whether or not somebody could develop a well in a different watershed and come up with a way to move the water over to this watershed. Theoretically, it works. It's a political thing that I'm not going to answer because I don't have the ability to.
Well, I think that, we know where.
I've already spoke to the village mayor. He'd have no problem selling us water. How we get it here, it's a different story. Yeah.
Well, I really think we ought to look at this, Tony,
Hoping the
building a
village of
plan,
Goshen and
see
building
if you
for
can
it, both
put
have water.
part of that back
Access.
into the aquifer.
Water
where
has
it's
access.
coming from.
Problem with the water is the county says it's stagnant if they don't use enough of it.
Yeah.
So it's flowing 6.5 miles. That water stays in that pipe for a very long time. if you
Then they
don't
have
high
to flush
usage.
it because the health department says you have too many, what do you call it, methyl death.
So this district could buy it from the same district we're talking about setting up here, could buy the water from the village. And we wouldn't use any water in this feeble aquifer.
But the village is not gonna allow an individual client to do that. They already have Glen Arden, where they allowed to come on without, and we didn't create a water district or a sewer district, and they're into them for 140,000. They have no way to collect that money. The only way they can collect that money is by creating a sewer district, and then we assess it against the taxes if they don't pay their bill.
Right.
So in speaking to the village mayor, he would love for us to buy water from him, but we'd have to create a water district in that watershed 50 in order to do that.
Tony, how do you make sure that we pay?
He has that ability. The village of Goshen doesn't have the ability to shut them off. He's private entity.
We'll have to buy the water from the municipality, mark it up and sell it to us.
100%.
But I mean, that's a situation for us to look at. If that's something that we want to discuss is creating a water district in that watershed 50 on that corridor.
I'm concerned from the town's point of view, I'm concerned about the speed in which we have to start making a decision about this.
Yes.
We have these projects in front of the planning board right now.
Yeah.
We're going through the EISs for one of them anyhow right now. We're going through Goshen Hospitality, which is the big one at 77,000 gallons. We're
But
gonna
then
make a
how do
decision on this.
you can't say we're shutting Goshen Hospitality down, but we're letting RDM go through because he's a warehouse and he puts in 3 times the amount of water he takes out of it.
I am not an attorney. However, the difference between Goshen Hospitality and RDM is the fact that RDM has enough recharge to more than meet their needs.
So, if we're talking about putting a moratorium in, it's a moratorium strictly for people that can't recharge what they have, what they take out.
I am giving that to an attorney.
Well, I'll kick it over there. I know that that's gone on in a couple other municipalities, active sort of in Village Monroe and some other places. So
Yeah.
you'd probably be more, it's not exactly aligned. I'm saying, you know, it's gone on, but you gotta be very, very specific about, you know, distinguishing between an RDM and a.
It all in difference to your trade. I don't want to spend money on lawyers fighting it.
No offense taken.
Can I just make one point to the board?
Sure.
So Neil and Frank discussed this with me last week, and you're right, the study is from 2003. The study was just like a comprehensive plan is for zoning. The study formed the underpinnings of the zoning that you adopted. And the study had some, I'm gonna say, more drastic recommendations for zoning that was not adopted. For example, I think Neil or Doug, you
Yes,
asked 22
one
acres.
or 22 acres.
Yeah, and that's not what you have, right? You
No.
have AQ3 and AQ6, so one on, one house on 6 acres.
Right.
So I would have a hard time, and I don't know how we as a town use the water study. You know, you've already had that opportunity, right? You got the study and then you form your zoning. These uses are occurring in compliance with your zoning. But
Yeah.
Neil's bringing up and sounding
Right.
alarm potentially. So
Yeah.
the idea may be, and things are changing, because now you're talking about sewer district, is maybe to restudy that problem and
Yes.
see if it panned out the way that it forecast to in 2003.
Yeah.
And if you're not spending money on attorneys, you can spend money on engineers and jobs.
Oh,
I'm outnumbered
I like them a
here.
little
But
Who's
I
gonna
think
check
that-
the engineer's work?
And there's a big difference between 130 an hour and 350 an hour. you know?
Thanks.
Look, the real important thing is this watershed in particular has to be dealt with right now.
Yes.
The rest of the watersheds in the town are not in that kind of desperation.
You should have been on number 1 before this. You
Yes.
know, you've given a lot of,
So,
Okay,
you're telling us what
Well, there are a
the
lot of
world we're
things that we
living in.
have to really discuss.
So do we want to do something about making a recommendation to go out and source costs for a new water study?
The question, if we're gonna do that, the question is, how much do we want these or any of these projects to keep on going forward? Or do we want to say, hey, we want to stop it right now until we come up back with the study? And I'm not suggesting any answer.
Just jump in for one thing. I
Okay,
know
sure.
we were talking commercial versus residential, who, you know,
Right.
residential is gonna be out, but some of these projects, although they're not single family housing, which I think that's what we're talking about residential, they are
No.
of residential use.
Mhm.
You know, these apartments, these hotels, they're transient residential uses, so there's something to think about as you move forward. with
Yeah.
the discussion.
I would say that the definition.
I think we should meet with Sean.
That's what they would like.
Together.
That's what they like, yeah.
Discuss it real fast. Just go out.
All right, very good. Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Frank.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody.
You're leaving?
Hey.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Yes, there is. There is
I
one more
think I-
comment. Is that-
Let me first.
Well, it has to do with wastewater. We actually do have at least 3 package plans proposed right now
Yes.
for these 3 projects. The scary thing to me with that is that 2 of them are proposing to discharge into a little stream that goes down to the corner, right there by Stewart's and all that, goes across by Millmar and then past Hilly's and the Orange County Health.
Yeah.
So you have 3 package plans that are in the process right now, looking to be approved.
That we're gonna be stuck with.
Well,
We
that's,
gotta look at possibly moving it.
Neil, these are associated with the projects?
yeah.
These are associated with projects that are.
Yeah.
Sure, those are- the 3 happens to be the 3 projects I identified in
Why
blue
couldn't-
on
I
yours.
mean, why couldn't they go into this transportation company?
Well, because there is no transportation company right now.
No. My points tonight, where I'm really still excited is just what you said. We are going to run out of water. So maybe what we do is we have a transportation company up to what we can afford to build with water, and the other ones just don't get built.
You can certainly have a transportation corporation. In that case, with all 3 of those, actually probably 4,
But the
It's probably
only, but Neil, in
Yeah.
actuality, the only way to satisfy the need for water is to create a water district and buy the water. If we wait for Tony to build it, that's 3 years down.
No,
the
no,
road.
wastewater is not gonna give us water.
No.
But what I was gonna say is that all three of those are going to be putting it into those package plants or whatever, and none of them are gonna be recharging.
Right.
They made a stupid claim that they were,
but
but all three of those are gonna go right down the
But
drain.
looking at them going into the Transportation Corporation doesn't help the problem today. It's gonna take them
No, no.
3 years to build that.
You
The only thing
you
that
have-
helps the only thing that helps the cause today to create water is to create a water district and buy it from the Village of Goshen or the Village of Florida, one or the other.
You have that kind of a pressure, yes. I believe you do.
Or we change the zoning.
A well to one watershed to another.
Right.
And it's not gonna
Correct.
get better if we don't do anything about it.
Or we don't build.
I was just gonna
You
say,
know,
oh, we just
we don't
place a
build.
moratorium
Well,
until we decide where we're gonna get the water and how we're gonna do it. We can do that too. We've done it before.
Yeah, unfortunately for us, we have a very active planning board right now, as Sean will attest.
Right,
A lot of it on that corridor.
yeah, so
Well,
we need to slow it down. is what's
We need to
gonna
slow it down
happen. Really.
because we do not have the water.
Yeah,
Doug, if I could just interject.
Go
This
ahead.
is more legal, but,
Yeah.
and you know, we're talking about legal stuff.
Right.
If you're gonna have a moratorium, you're gonna need to have some sort of basis for it. You could
Right,
perhaps rely on that report, but the first person that challenges you is gonna say that
Right.
report's.
25 years old.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
where do you
So
want to
that-
take the financial hit? Get buying the water? or
No, I
spending
think,
the
I think
litigation?
I think we sit with Sean.
Yes,
I mean, I don't know if you do it and
Yeah.
your company does it, but I'm sure there's an engineering firm out there with a hydrologist that's gonna sit there and do a study. How long is that gonna take? Now, we could put a moratorium in place until that's done, I would imagine, right?
Yeah,
we've done it before.
we've done it before.
Some of these. All right,
So can we get together with Sean real, it's.
Yeah, I think, you know, like a work session. type
Yeah,
of setting
exactly.
would be
Session,
better than-
but think about what we're talking.
See what
about
your schedule's
tonight.
like for next week, Monday, Tuesday.
We'll do.
Yep, and then we'll limit it on how many people can be there.
Well, we're not making any decisions.
No.
No.
Could all 5 board members be in a work session?
Oh, yeah, you can have a work session.
With 5 board members?
Yeah, yeah, it's, it would be, have to be open
But
to
it has to
public.
be public.
Well, yeah.
Our next town board meeting, don't we have a work session?
We do have an hour at the beginning of the next.
Yeah, but the whole point, the whole point is to have a meeting where
Right.
we can sit down and just go over everything.
That's right.
And you're gonna have, not that you're trying to hide anything, but we're
No.
just trying to start the process to get it done. So I would
Yes.
imagine, you know,
Sean,
My
when do you
recommendation,
have the report done?
my recommendation would be that two of you
Yeah,
perhaps meet
right.
in like a work session perhaps during the day.
yeah, and
And
then you
then
can bring
is that-
Neil, you can bring, all
Matures, then we bring it back to the whole board for a
That's
discussion.
right. That's what you.
right, so just let me know, Sean, next week, on what day, and then. Okay, number 4, real easy one, review and approve for the 35th and annual tour to Goshen to take place on Sunday, August 21st, 2022.
I'll handle this one.
Did I get a
if you don't
motion
mind.
or discussion?
Yeah, we got the insurance, I saw. Was
Yeah,
there- I
everything's-
thought he wasn't gonna do that.
Last year,
This is the
this is his last year.
He's got it right on it, our last
Yeah,
ride.
this
The last
is-
ride.
Oh, okay. So you need somebody make a
Yeah,
motion?
motion.
Accept the.
Rory wanted to speak, guys, before. you
Okay,
do?
sorry, Laura.
motion. Yeah.
No, it's all right. I just, I reviewed,
Go ahead.
I reviewed the insurance policy, which is just, I know it's 35th year. I'm sure it hasn't changed much. I couldn't get a hold of Brian in time. There's a couple things. I don't think I have a complete policy.
Okay.
Where there's literally, if you look on, take commercial general liability coverage form, it cites schedule location of premises. I don't want to be overly nitpicky, but it's blank. It refers to stuff later on. You can look at the contract in its entirety, figure that stuff out. So I just wanted to. advise.
So could we make a motion pending your
Exactly.
Thank
review?
you. Thank you.
Exactly.
That's
That's
it. I
what
just
I
want
was-
to clarify with Fran, Scott.
Yeah.
It's just a simple question.
I make the motion.
It's not material. in nature.
So a motion approving the 35th and final tour to Goshen pending
Insurance
legal
policy.
review
We're not
of the
approving
insurance
Florida
policy.
Goshen, It's the insurance policy.
Okay, there you go.
So everything else checks out.
I made the motion.
Rick made the
Rick, make the motion.
motion.
I was afraid to even bring that up after all.
No,
I
no,
was like,
That happens every year, every year.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
consistent.
Did you ask Priscilla?
Go to the
Because
last
Priscilla's got a.
Priscilla's name, yes, Priscilla's on there.
I second the motion for discussion.
It's not just the insurance policy, though, we're approving him doing.
Right.
the Tour de Goshen.
I was speaking just as the insurance policy. You you can approve Tour de Goshen altogether. I was just speaking about.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
I'm sorry,
saying-
George.
I'm saying approving it, subject to your review and approval.
That's what he said.
Yeah, I might have missed, the way I said it, I could understand what you meant, so. my
So
bad.
can I have one of those motions?
I have Rick made the motion to approve it. I need a second.
I'll second it.
I seconded it for discussion, remember?
Okay. he
Nobody
seconded.
opened it for discussion.
We discussed it.
We
All
after I
just
said-
all in
discussed
favor?
it.
I'll second.
Aye.
I,
All right,
yeah.
I'll get you
Opposed?
guys in there.
No roll call, right?
Review and approve the July 14th, 2022 minutes. Any discussion on them? I wasn't here.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You, Joe, you abstain.
I abstain. I wasn't here.
That's what he said.
You didn't say that.
Number 7, salt shed.
I heard.
We need to declare the board's intent to be lead agency and declare this project as an unlisted action under seeker so that we can
Get our $50,000.
get our $50,000 grant.
I'll
So
make a
moved.
motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye. Yay. Grand.
Okay, moving quickly.
Yes.
Yeah,
Schedule a joint public hearing with planning board and zoning board for the Broadleaf Vivian Lane Solar on Thursday, August 18th, 2022 at 7:30.
What's the planning board meeting again? It's an odd
Well,
off night.
Planning,
we don't have ZBAs locked in. It's not a ZBA night, and I don't have
Right.
all them on board for a quorum. As you've seen, getting a quorum at times is tricky with that group.
They can
So
set their own public.
I think if you guys want to do the motion, that's fine, right?
If
You
we
guys
have
can
a
set it.
quorum.
We can try and then.
Yeah.
The idea is to not have the public coming out multiple times.
Oh, I don't, it's okay. That's not a problem.
Okay, if that's fine. with the
So
board.
we'll-
As many there as they can. That's-
we'll make a motion that we're gonna be there and you're gonna have to figure out if
I
the
will,
zoning board
and I
will be
don't
there
have
and
a
if not,
ZBA
they're gonna have to,
So
they'll have
they
to come
wanna-
back.
yeah, if they want to join in, they'll join in. If not, we'll do our own.
Our own meeting. Okay, yeah.
We
can-
can send out
schedule.
a notice to them. and
Good.
Okay.
Get a response.
Sure.
We're having a lot of difficulties getting people on the zoning board and the planning board.
Right.
Yeah, so we can schedule our meeting and how they can schedule theirs. It's not a big deal.
So can I have that
I make a
motion?
motion.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The last and final on the agenda tonight, discuss the probability of having an outside solar energy study completed through the town. I've asked Sean to come on that, to talk about that. You know, we have, had a very stressful public hearing the other night. Opened up a lot of our eyes, I would assume. At least it
Yes.
opened up mine. I wasn't here for the approval process of creating the solar districts, but
Yeah.
there was mass confusion the other night. And I think there's a strong need to have a study done by an outside firm to determine a lot of different things, like how many solar plants we're going to allow in each of these areas to the biggest problem I had the other night, I think, Phil, you were along that with me, is the fact that we were allowing them to subdivide a piece of property to maximize the amount of megawatts that are on one parcel, when New York State strictly says
Yeah.
the maximum number of megawatts is 5 megawatts for any section, block, and lot,
Right.
lot number. So I would imagine that, you know, the state of New York is saying, you know, they're trying to protect the overgrowth of solar work, and we're
Absolutely.
allowing it by subdividing this property for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is something that I felt strongly about. I spoke to Phil briefly about it, you know.
I felt very strongly about it too, because we really have to look at this thing. They were talking about, well, you need 5 megawatts in order to be profitable. Hence, I asked him that question.
Right.
And 2 megawatts can be profitable, but I'm not even sure if we really want commercial solar in the town of Goshen. And I don't know if we can restrict it, if it's discriminatory. But I know it's okay to have household solar, that's not a problem. But we're going wild with these solar projects. And I think if we're gonna allow them at all, we really have to start protecting the people in the town, and protecting the town. Sean, I've gone
The
over your
landscape too,
memos.
the landscape.
The landscape, the whole, for everything. I mean, I mean, just a quick bunch of notes, you know, and because we have to figure out what district it should be in. Right now, they can be in any district, RU, commercial, wherever. I think that's crazy to put a solar farm next to a small housing development or residential on Owens Road, there are 17 houses. It's a scenic overview. We're gonna have 10,000 megawatts up there. It's just, it's not making any sense for the integrity of our town. And so we're looking, though, I mean, they can have it in an agricultural district, and I understand the farmers want to have it. But at this particular point, I think most of them have it. But to have it in every single district, I think we should limit it maybe to a commercial district, limit the size if we do anything. Go ahead,
Jump in at that point?
Yes, please.
So you recently, relatively recently, considered solar from a zoning perspective. You adopted the enabling legislation in 2016.
Right.
And I had a recollection of your overarching, your legislative intent, but I went back today and downloaded the local law and read it. And my recollection was very similar. I think at the time you were looking to preserve farms, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
this was 2016. We had just come out of, a time where you weren't really going to get housing development. You were worried about the influx of commercial application on existing farm parcels. And you saw this at that time as a potential way to preserve some of the farms. So for example,
Right.
one of the first applicants was Mr. Dykshaw,
Yep.
right? He saved half of his parcel for his farm and developed the other half as solar.
Yeah.
And it is admittedly next to residential properties. But I think at that time you were okay with that because you would rather see half the farm and half solar rather than, let's say, warehouse or something.
Right.
The other thing that's changed is the way New York State structures or incentives for these solar companies. NYSERDA and state, there was a time where they were incentivizing batteries. You saw a lot of batteries.
Yeah.
They're no longer doing that, so batteries go away. So you're fighting New York State a little bit because you're pushing for this, as you know. But in terms of zoning, there has been a change in what existed just 5, 6 short years ago. It's amazing.
Yes.
But with that said, I don't know if you have any specific questions or anything like that.
Well, we only have one farm, two farms, Dykeson and Johnson. Johnson's talking to them today about leasing out some of his property to a solar farm. He said, because he wants to stay in the dairy business, but he's got to pay all his taxes. In fact, those two farmers, they have to take their milk at their cost to Saratoga.
Right, I know.
There's no processing plants. So they're gonna go out of business anyway, one way or the other.
Yeah. So just going down the line, I'm talking like we could talk about if they not allowing them to ask for variances. Right now, this place is the last on Owens Road. They're asking for variances on the fence, 18 feet rather than 100, and on the property itself. And I'm thinking, if it fits in the property, it fits in the property. If they have to ask for variance, I think I would just say, forget about it.
It may be as simple as what the supervisor discussed before about not allowing them to subdivide as a.
Well, definitely.
You can't prevent somebody from hiding their intentions to you. So for example, somebody comes in, they subdivide the property, they say they just want residential or whatever, and then a year from now they sell those parcels. There's no way to foresee that. You don't have a person involved.
Right.
But you could prevent subdivision of a parcel in connection with site plan application, where somebody cuts up a large parcel and has 5, 10, 15 megawatts.
Yeah, I mean, they can do so many.
Can we implement in our zoning or in our town code that no two adjacent parcels are allowed to have solar?
I don't know how you do that without taking somebody's rights away.
Because you're assuming that, well, both parcels were originally subdivided.
Oh, I see what you're saying. If they're in common ownership?
Yeah.
Yes, I think you can. I don't think you can do it if George and you are neighbors and George,
Right.
it's a race for development.
Right, no, I got that. But if you take a farmer and says, okay, I'm gonna bypass this, I'm gonna cut it in half first, I'm gonna retain it, because no solar company wants to buy it, they just want to lease it. So,
The lawyers are very smart.
Yeah, I
You
know,
have
no.
Somebody set up an LLC or something like that.
Some are smarter
yeah,
than
no, I
others.
got you.
But what I'm saying is, Joe, that
I got you.
You can come up with every scenario and somebody in some way is gonna, but if you want to limit the size, I think you could put a restriction on subdivisions in connection with the site plan. That's something you're interested in doing.
I don't know if we can just eliminate solar, commercial solars from the town completely if we want to sort them out.
I don't know
We've got
if you want
enough
to.
commercials on. What?
I don't know if you really want to. It's something for this board to consider. I mean, you absolutely, you're right, you can allow solar in certain zoning districts, for example, the I and the HC and things like that.
But
Right, again, getting back to your original intent in 2016, it was, so these properties don't get developed into uses that you want to see.
Well, that's what we're talking about right now. I mean, if we do allow the solar, and maybe we can put it in industrial areas. Just only allow them to zone it and then reduce it to 2 megawatts instead of 5 megawatts. And then what? We could?
Well,
No,
if you could,
We could.
If you put it in
And
an
then-
industrial area,
Yeah.
you're not gonna have any
Yeah.
solar being built.
Well, that's
So-
fine.
No, I'm just saying, that's.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
You can guarantee that.
Thanks.
Bill, as you, I mean, you saw in the
Yes.
meeting the other night, like, there's only a limited amount of areas that are outside of those industrial areas that can take a 5 megawatt solar farm without applying for a variance. And the variance
That's
can't
right.
be based on the need for economic feasibility. It's got to
That's
be
not our
other
problem.
things, right? So I
Right.
mean, to a certain extent, I don't know that you need to limit variances, that test is already in place. So
Well, whatever makes it go into place is what we would look at doing.
I
But
know,
until then, right now, because I'm talking about even when they have, it would have to be total coverage, so you don't see it. And once again, the setbacks would be, instead of 100 feet, 300 feet. I mean, I want to make it so that we don't drive down the road and all we see are big black panels.
you do have
Well,
different stuff in for solar farms that the ZBA had an interpretation before, because in the code that's specific to the solar farms, there's different, there's different height and distance requirements and things like that. You can always adopt, just make it
So what I'm saying to
more
you
stringent.
is, I think we should propose a moratorium right now and study all the things. Each of us has different things that we like and don't like about solar farms. Discuss it with the engineer and you to see if it's legal, what we can do. And revamp this whole solar project, because our law that we passed in 2016 is absolutely obsolete. I mean, this fellow said it, they control now 35 and there's 2,800.
I'm just gonna hop in real quick as to the
Yeah, go
moratorium issue. As Sean touched on or alluded to earlier, there's gotta be an intent basis. And I'm not suggesting that you're not getting there. There may be, talking specifically about the form that just presented to us. There's a reason that the 5 megawatt situation exists, right? There's probably a legislative intent that describes it, but there has to be, to put that moratorium in place, we have to have something more than I don't like it, because we have a code right now, and it's not like water where we're
I
short
think
of
we
water.
can revise the code. I think we can relook at the code and
Well-
put a moratorium until we look at the code.
I'll punt on that for now, but because there have,
We can
what is,
revise our
what's the
zoning.
basis, what's the basis of the?
We
the
want to
moratorium?
revise our zoning.
Well, what's the,
I think if we structure it that we want to do a third-party study on solar overall in the area, and we need a time frame to absorb that,
Yeah.
get that done, and then
I think
chew
we
on
need to
that.
go, we would need to do it at the next meeting
Fine.
because we have to define the moratorium. So that's fine. I'm
I'm
trying to
not
clarify.
sure Really, if it's that complicated. I don't think. it's
Can I jump in?
Go ahead,
Yeah.
yeah, come on.
So if you're gonna do a moratorium, it needs to be by local law, so you have to go
Right.
through the local law process.
Right,
The second you say that word moratorium, there's always a rush to develop, right?
Absolutely.
So what you're gonna need to know, and what's gonna need to be in your local law is where do you make that cutoff? You've had moratoriums in the past.
Yeah.
You cut them off, let's say, for anybody that does not have an application yet, so no new applications can be
Right.
accepted in process. You've had moratoriums where you say, nobody that does not have reached a level of approval, preliminary level of approval.
Right.
They have to stop, or they proceed at their own risk. So you need to be prepared for it. You may get a
Fine.
rush of applicants that just come in
I
to get
understand.
under that. And you also need to have some sort of idea, at least initial, well, that it'll be in the law. And if you authorize Word to draft the law, you're gonna need to kind of tell them where you're thinking about putting that line in the sand.
Okay, well, you know some of my
So,
concerns.
Kind of going back, kind of how we were talking about the work session, and maybe we can designate someone that, or one or two on the board that can hop into this, that can assist me in guiding what you guys want, and that I could draft it that way, but
I
again,
think that the smartest thing for us to do is just allow everything that's in planning already or an application is in place to move forward and stop everything new until we have the study done.
Right.
everything new that's short of site plan approval.
No new applications will be accepted during this
Right.
period.
Anything that.
Well, then you're gonna have, as Sean noted, I just caution, I mean, I don't know how quickly they can put together an application, but the local law is not gonna be passed at least for 2 meetings, because you're gonna have to get to the next meeting, and then you're gonna have to have the public coming. So we're at least a month out. And I don't know, I mean, we could get 25 applications.
Do we need a local law for the moratorium?
Yes.
There's no other way around that we can stop development on anything without going to the local law and the public hearings and all of that
There
stuff?
have been discussions.
I
about
forget.
Having it as like an ordinance type of thing.
Right.
Again, keep in mind, you are essentially suspending somebody's right to develop, right?
But,
You
yeah.
could face a takings issue in terms of development.
They could have bought that property with that idea.
But if
So-
they
so
haven't presented a site plan or anything yet,
That's gotta be written into the
well,
moratorium. That's
fine,
gotta be-
whatever it is.
I-
All I want to
It's
do
just
is,
not, it's not as simple. It is as simple.
this is
as-
not rocket science. It just is,
No, it's not.
it's not.
But if
Right.
you don't do it by local law, you have a greater chance of liability being challenged.
I understand that. We're going to be challenged anyway.
That-
On some of the
Let's-
projects. I
let's
know that.
nail that challenge.
We did it on a housing development, so we had 5 challenges, of which 3 we were able to discuss and come to an agreement. One was Maplewood. And he wanted to take us to court, and we would have lost that one. But anything that we do, when you do that, everything stops when you when you have a moratorium. So you're right, I mean, we have to set whether we want to do it on anything, and no new applications until we have this study that Joe's talking about.
That you can put that to motion. I don't know that it can just pass as simply as that tonight, but you can put it through a
Well, let's
motion.
talk about it tomorrow and then bring it on the next, at the next board meeting.
That's
I don't
fine.
have a
I
problem.
mean, it could be a special meeting if you want. I can get you the answer. I just don't, I'm not comfortable with you guys moving on that tonight and
No,
then
fine.
restricting people that potentially, rather have a little more
Fine.
teeth behind it. But that's fine.
But
I
agree
understand-
with
I
Joe, we
understand
should
what
have
the-
an outside or a firm. I think
Sean,
we
can you
should
take a look and see who
discuss-
does that?
So
So can you take a look and see who does solar studies?
Yes, yeah.
There are people out there that will.
Or-
Do that.
Or we can go through this whole thing ourselves.
Well, you have to
But I
set the
agree with you.
criteria for what you want to look at.
Did you say that we're talking about solar, the batteries are no longer being? put in?
You're not seeing applications for batteries because the financial incentive isn't there. At
Isn't
least that's
there.
what's been explained to me by the
Right.
solar companies.
Yeah.
We haven't seen a battery in like 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's New York State.
Yeah, there was a point there where it seemed
Oh,
like.
everybody was having
And
these batteries.
that's why these applications jump around so much, because it's what New York is incentivizing at the time.
I think another thing that happened with this last meeting that we had is they were really kind of helter skelter. It was a poor presentation.
Yeah.
And then.
That was a circus.
Yeah.
I never want to participate. in it.
You've gone through other applications where the applicants are much more prepared. And
Yeah.
if
Tonight
people
they
have
were
questions, and these guys.
These guys were prepared.
Yeah, right.
Another one was like a clown car.
Yeah,
So-
next time, can the ZBA and the town sit closer together, so I don't have to.
We did that on purpose.
They're the
I knew that. I was
just, they're the broadly applicant.
Same
Yeah.
applicant is coming.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I
I've
know.
dealt, the ZBA has had them, I've watched that presentation before. So I understand.
All right, great.
Let's work on
Yeah,
this,
I
okay?
had a
Whatever we
heads up,
need.
so I'm ready to go.
Okay, whatever we need, pull out, Sean, and you can assist, and you know what we're looking for. What we're looking to do is revamp this thing and make it make sense, so we don't have solar panels all over the town in every single housing development. Right now, it says they can go into any district.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
With certain caveats, but yeah, they
What-
essentially can, I
They
mean,
can go into any district, RU, they can go into agriculture.
well, they gotta fit into it. I mean, the property's gotta fit into it, so it's not, it's not like just endless space that can fit these.
No, but they're not zoned out of any district,
No, I agree. On that principle, I agree.
Right.
I just meant,
and that's gotta change.
no doubt.
Anyway,
So do we have to do a moratorium then? Could we
Well-
Just, there seems to be like a couple of different criteria.
Let's start with the
that we can
easiest
insert
part.
and
You gotta
modify
stop
the
it, right?
ordinance.
You gotta stop it, right? So
To
the
look
stop, it's a moratorium, and that's
Right.
gotta be done by local law, which at the very least, even if I drafted that tonight, we had a special meeting tomorrow, we still gotta give enough notice for
For
the
a public
public. So
hearing.
we're already 2
Okay,
weeks
we're
out,
fine.
no matter what we do.
Good.
Right, so, if it's knocked out and you wanna call a special meeting, then we could do that. If-
Whatever goes through the cracks up until we do the more, I want
Right.
to do the moratorium just to put everybody else on notice. Because frankly, there's a special use permit. We can stop anyone we want anyway. Because they have to come to the town board for a special use permit, for reasons.
I was, yeah, and I don't know if we're gonna,
Sean, you want to weigh in on that?
I'm not gonna argue with you.
Yeah.
where you
No,
get, where
but
you're
I-
right is that the moratorium will come in, that it would be at the same meeting, right? So,
Go ahead, Sean.
Your approvals aren't discretionary, right? That means that you have certain criteria that
Right.
that are in your law, that essentially if they meet that criteria, you would have to issue
Yeah.
a special permit.
Right.
however,
Listen,
that wouldn't come before the board before the next meeting, and the
No.
moratorium
I know that.
could become, the local law could
Right.
be in place by
But
that
really,
time.
based on your last memo, I must have 50 items
I'm sure.
that haven't been complied with, that we can change. I mean, I read your last two memos. There were so many items there that Owens didn't follow, but it applied to every other.
It's the same criteria applied
Right.
to every applicant.
Exactly. So I have no problem with it.
If you don't mind, I have one question.
Of course.
In reference to that meeting. It took a long, very long time because there were so many comments from the planning board. Why was that their application deemed complete with that many open questions still from the planning board?
Yeah, and George had a very similar question before. And a complete application is really just that, right? You need the site plans need to meet the criteria in the plan, you need to have a SWIP. As long as they provide those things, it's a complete application. And you do get lawsuits and arguments over what's a complete application. If you think about it, if you're approving a project, you would rather hear from the public sooner in the beginning of the process rather than the end, right?
Right.
So you don't want to go through, it's like, okay, you're complete, but we have all these comments, let's work this out. And then now at the end, okay, you're ready for a public hearing. And then I think the public feels
Right.
cheated. So the criteria is complete application, it's almost like a checklist approach. You have all these items, then you're ready for public hearing.
I was very upset because the one fella had foiled for information and his property is adjacent. He's going to be impacted by this thing. And he didn't get the answers yet from the foil. So he couldn't ask the questions.
I think
And they said they were going to close the public hearing. And that really upset me.
I think it was a DEC foil and Army Corps of
Whatever.
Engineers foil, but
Yeah.
you might not get those for months and months and months and months. And it could turn into someone uses that as a mechanism to slow down the development process.
Yeah, well,
And for my own information, is that the proper protocol that the planning board goes through the whole thing before the public speaks? Or could we have the public speak and then they go through?
It's how the planning board has traditionally done it. There's no specific protocol. I know they've discussed that in the past and received suggestions like that. I think they just felt that perhaps if the public hears some of the questions, maybe that would eliminate some. That's how.
Maybe, okay.
but I can't understand because they came in with this brown paper bag with a map drawn on it with two sides, right? And I was
Very-
like, not really happy about this thing.
Yeah, the primary engineer is sick. I know he's gonna be out for an extended period, so it sounds like something extremely serious. So that was the second chair that you had.
I see.
He's gonna be taking over. I spoke to him today. He gave me that news and concerned that his boss is gonna be out for a number of months, if not definitely.
They expressed the same.
Now, is he the guy with the dog?
No, they're in the same company, they have different roles.
Oh. That was amazing.
Do I need to have
Out
dog
in the
biscuits
car.
for the next one?
You may need dog
It's
biscuits.
When they have resuscitation, you locked them in the car. I left them in the car at night. It was very hot. Anyway,
Gotcha. All right, moving on.
yes. you're right.
Discuss and approve a motion to authorize supervisor to pay accounts payable check run on July 28th, in the amount of $172,519.58.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Boom. Discuss and approve a motion to authorize the supervisor to pay workers' comp claims in the amount of $2,235.38. As a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Wow.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? For information purposes only, Christine Cavallari conducted an accounts payable audit for July 19th. It's attached. Anybody want to see that? All right, finally.
10 after 10.
So what happened to Young Grove? No, they sent me a text message and said they really didn't want to wait, if we can just put them on the next meeting.
Were they here tonight?
Yeah, it was mine
So-
and Mary's,
You didn't get my text?
it was Mary's school.
Ah,
I'm only joking. Open up to the public?
Yes. Very old subject. Aaron J. Goshen, street dedication. Am I understanding correctly that board members believe that it's about to come to the board for approval?
All documentation and easements have been delivered. We were waiting for the title insurance, which Kelly received. And I believe it will be in front of us at our next meeting to approve it and dedicate the roads. We still have an issue with,
You're also waiting for the plans on the water treatment building to recall that they're looking to release all the bonds and then take the bond on the water treatment plant.
Correct.
We can't give you an estimate recommendation on the bond until I actually see the plans. I understand they're on their way by the end of this month, is what I was told.
yeah. So I would,
It's very few days left.
I can assure you this. I'll put my butt on the line. We will be plowing your development this year. That helps you.
That will,
Are the school buses going in and out?
Not yet.
yeah.
Okay.
Are they?
we don't have issues with services from the school buses or the post office or any of the delivery people.
Okay.
So far, we don't have police enforcement of parking. There are things that we would get with street dedication we're not getting now, but most of the services that do require street dedication, we are getting now.
You're not getting mail delivered to the house though, right?
They are.
Oh, you are? Okay.
The school agreed and the post office agreed to
To
go.
do it.
Post office has been delivering mail since last year.
Okay, good. So they're gonna be taking out the awfully looking mailboxes at the front of the,
Hopefully, Rumford will take those away.
So
we make that a prerequisite?
the big issue is the
Yeah,
plows.
the plow
Yeah.
this.
The part of the bond.
Yep, okay.
The bond release on things like that.
Okay,
The plowing is the big issue.
Plowing is a big deal.
yeah, we'll be plowing this
Because
year.
the private plow companies can't handle.
Yeah.
a lot of stuff.
Enforcing to the park.
And there's some tight areas in there that I'm sure the town is gonna be challenged as well.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Town
It's our
is
fault.
supposed to do that. They'll learn and they'll figure out how to throw
I got you. I
requisite
got you.
resources to get it done right.
If it is, it's our fault.
Are you here for something else, Sean, or you just?
No, I heard the question, I just thought.
And the last part about what you said about the well, then, is we're gonna have money set aside, right? Is that well,
That's what the developer is asking you for, yes. He's asking you to release his existing bond, which is quite significant on the
Yeah.
roadway and the, municipal and public infrastructure. He recognizes that the well needs to be completed, and he's hoping that he will return his larger bond or a smaller bond for the completion of that work treatment.
so is that gonna
Can
be?
we get a definitive number from them? I know they were lower than we thought.
They provided an estimate, I believe, but I don't have the plans to compare it to, so.
So, right.
Say
And do we know if that estimate's based on prevailing wage or?
I do not know if
Okay.
they did, but it will need to be based on prevailing wage, I just don't know what's incorporated in this number.
Is that gonna be a cash bond?
It's up to this board.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a bond.
It is not that big a bond.
What are we talking about approximately?
Typical building like that, just, I haven't even looked at that, so I'm saying probably $250,000 in that ballpark, probably $250,000 less. But keep in mind, you're holding several $1 million.
Oh, right. That's, and the problem is it's coming up for renewal, then he's gonna have to pay that renewal fee.
Yes.
And those easements and all that other stuff, all that?
All done,
All taken care of.
I've heard that's all done.
all done, completely done, and the title insurance was all taken care of, Kelly said. Anything else, Bob?
Yeah, about this transportation district.
Transportation
Want a
Corporation.
motion to
Motion to
close the
close.
hearing or what? Should we go?
Rick?
Can I
I make
get,
the motion.
can I get a motion to
Second.
close the public hearing? I mean, to close the town board meeting.
Yeah, so. you-
Second,
Rick,
somebody
second.
I'll
second.
second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
It is, you turn it off.
So.
And I agree with.
He gave me
Mr.
a
Florio's comment
tentative
about
complete date
attorneys.
of August 4th.
Come on, man.
It was quick.